T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I am being joined once again by Mr. Chris Rice. I believe this will be his 5th appearance on the show. Definitely one of the record holders, probably in the top 3 or so. And yeah, we're talking about his 2025 Emerald season, his new reptile room. You know, for anyone who's listened to any of these before, they will go in a million different directions. And well, this will probably be a long episode as well if Chris has it in him, which he usually does. So, but kind of before we get into that, of course, as always, USARK. So USARK is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle. Check out usark.org for everything you need to know about the organization. That website is also where you can find alerts to new pieces of legislation introduced either at local levels or the national level, as well as any updates on any pieces of legislation. usark.org is also where you can become a member of the organization. As a community, we have strength in numbers, and the more people that are behind the cause, the better. And here we are. Thank you to everybody who is here live with us. If you are here on YouTube and you are not already, please subscribe to the channel. New podcasts drop every single day of the week here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network from some of the best hosts in the game, talking about a wide variety of topics from within the reptile industry. So if you are a reptile podcast fan, you've come to the right place. If you're more of an audio person like myself, we are on all of the major platforms, be that Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the Trap Talk Reptile Network. A follow and a 5-star review on any of those platforms would be most appreciated. And for me, if anyone wants to support me, support the show, have early access to any of the projects that I have working, I started a Patreon page recently. It's patreon.com/CushReptile. You can go over there to check out all of the different perks that come along with my Patreon page. Primary one being 50% of all membership fees immediately become credit towards the purchase of an animal, and that credit never expires. So all that housekeeping out of the way, let's bring Chris onto the show.
How's it going, man?
Doing all right, man. How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just trying to keep this cough under control.
Yes, perfect.
I apologize in advance if I just started up earlier today. I'm like coughing, a little dry cough, so hopefully no serious stuff here.
You're finally here, so Steve can be satiated now. His Chris Rice fix is in for the night.
Have I really been on here 5 times? That's crazy.
I believe because we did our trilogy early last year, and then the Vin Russo episode.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 5 episodes.
Jeez, well, they've been good ones. So what, we're clocking in like 20 hours already. We'll put in another 5 tonight.
I think, yeah, depending on how tonight goes, we might hit the 20 threshold. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. It really is kind of nuts sometimes for me to think about just like how many hours worth of podcasts. I mean, you know, not even looking at like what MJ has done. You see those numbers running up on the how many podcasts there have been, but like, man. This is, I don't know, it's kind of crazy to think about just like how much time like I could go on to YouTube. Like, this is how many episodes, you know, almost 100 episodes of like average 2 hours a piece. Like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah. You don't realize it builds up so fast. Like, there's actually hundreds of hours of this shit going on.
Yeah.
But really it's fun. It's enjoyable. I mean,
yeah,
you know, I always have a good time coming on here. Get a chance to ramble.
Hell yeah. Absolutely.
Shit,
so, man, I mean,
Oh, you're there. Okay, it looked like you froze for a second. I was like, I thought it was all screwed up. It's good.
Cool. We're all good. All right. So, man, it's been quite a while since you've been on. You know, I got to see your collection when I was in Florida for Daytona, which is pretty awesome. Did a vlog. What's new? What's going on in your neck of the woods these days?
Well, so I had 2 litters last year. So when you were here, it was just a few weeks. We weren't even really fully moved in yet. So yeah, it was just a few weeks after we had moved in August, and then I had the first litter at the end of September, and then the second litter in the middle of December. So that was about 6 weeks ago now. Actually, I think probably 6 weeks to the day or something. I can't remember what,
Cool.
13th or 14th or something. But
Okay.
yeah, so just basically had those 2 litters, and I don't know if we had talked about it when you were here or not, but the room had gotten a little warmer than I had cared for it to for the first, as I was kind of adjusting things for the first month or so. And I think that impacted the first litter negatively. There was a higher slug count. Yeah, higher slug count than I would have cared for. And I noticed that the female for the last probably about 4 to 6 weeks of gestation, she wasn't really basking anymore. And that's kind of unusual. Typically they'll ramp down a bit, but they're still basking daily. But I noticed she wasn't really basking anymore. And I think it's just because it was just getting too hot overall. So I made an adjustment to the placement of that cage a little bit. So it was, in the future, it won't hopefully be as much of a problem. But, there's always hiccups and little things that go wrong when you make a move like that. But overall, it's been pretty smooth sailing. Artemis's litter in December went pretty well. So I had, was it 9? I think it was 9 live babies. To double check. And there was 9 live babies and 1 stillborn and a few slugs. One of those babies didn't make it, ended up having the umbilical hernia thing, which we can get into that later, which is seems to be a real common thing with emeralds in particular. Okay. And when I've had those, just like most people I've talked to, it seems to be like 50-50 whether it makes it or not. And some of the ones that look like, oh, they're going to be no problem, it'll pull through this, end up being the ones that don't. So it's been confusing. It's one of those one of many things still left to figure out, I think, with emeralds, as far as what's causing that, how to do something about it if you can do something about it, and also how to deal with it when it happens.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah, I had a scrub python do that this year, and it was, the umbilical hernia was amongst a host of other issues. It was, half the size of its siblings, and the animal didn't make it. But yeah, I definitely want to get into that topic for sure.
I've talked with Ed a bit about it and a few other people, and it'll just be interesting to kind of share the discussion there. Yeah. So so basically wrapping it up with the end of last year, made the move. It wasn't a long move. It was, we're about 40 minutes from where we were before. So not a huge shift as far as the climate goes or anything like that, which I think overall made things go smoother.
Sure.
When we did the move, I tried to situate it to where it basically had all the racks that the cages were going to go on top of set up beforehand. And then we just tried to move everything, in one swoop, just a couple trips in my friend Mike's truck. Got all the cages, did everything as, basically as cleanly as possible with a minimal stress, and seemed to work overall. I did have one female that was actively breeding before the move, and she stopped after the move. So it seemed to throw her off. She just doesn't, I kept trying the male with her afterwards, and just nothing happened there. So, that kind of stuff I think is to be expected, but you're not gonna, not gonna be able to get 100% every time. But she still seems fine and everything. She just, for whatever reason, was put off from it. So we'll just keep trying to pair her, this year, and see if she takes. And if she does, great. If not, then, she needs a little more time.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine a move mid-cycle would have to be something
exactly off. Yeah, because she was clearly developing. Like she was, she was swelling up. So I was like, that's why the timing of it, I'm like, damn it. She's like, I wish this was either a month earlier or a month later, because she would potentially have ovulated by that point. But I think she just reabsorbed and was put off by it. And I had one baby that went off feed for a couple of weeks. It seemed to be stressed out from the move. But other than that, nothing, and then it started eating again and was no problem. So,
cool.
All in all, pretty smooth sailing. And if anything, with the green tree pythons, I had the one Biak male that I had been trying to breed for, I think, 3 seasons in a row. It was really killer, dark, high, really, really bold, black patterned red neo Biak male. And it was just an absolute timid animal every time I tried to breed it before. And then I don't know if the move changed something with the hierarchy as far as the other males in the room or what happened, but he's now breeding. And so I was right on the edge of considering selling him just to see him go to somebody else to maybe he would work somewhere else,
Sure.
But he kicked in, so.
That'd be the point where I'm like, I'm probing this snake.
Well, I was same here. I was starting to, I'm just like, is it a female? But it's like every sign was there that he was a male.
Yeah.
And then so I was like, well, this is going to be the last test. Let me just put him in with this female. And yes, I put him in with a female Aru, which I know is a sin, but
oh my gosh. It's not Tuesday, Chris. You can't be talking like that on here.
This designer cross stuff. No, it's that's the one I've always liked, the Aru Biak crosses, and so that's my sin. Otherwise, I'll definitely be trying to put them to Biak females in time as well, because that's what I was trying before, but didn't go for it. So let's see what else. So I was saying, so basically the end of the season was, as far as milestones, I hit 10 litters since the start of the project. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, that felt pretty good. So stats are on that are like 5 seasons in a row, starting with the 2021 season, and then 10 litters, 82 live babies total produced.
Wow.
But not all of those made it, of course. Few didn't, but as far as live birth babies, so it was pretty good.
You still have 78 of them.
No. I've sold quite a few of them already, but I do have a ton, and I know I always say I've got to let more go, but I really am at the point now where it's just like, shit, all right, I'm gonna have to be letting go ones that I never wanted to, just to make space. There's not gonna be the capacity to have all those as adults. So
sure. But
it's a good problem to have. It's definitely, better than the opposite.
Yeah, I feel like that was like a conversation we were having when I was there, is like, working a kind of niche project from the ground up. The first clutch or litter or 2 or even 3, you're like, well, obviously I'm going to keep all of them. And then eventually you get to the point where you want to keep holding back, and you're like, wow, I don't have a 5,000 square foot facility. Now what the hell do you do? Like when you, I bet, when you're getting your first litters, and like for me with the scrubs, when I was getting my first clutches, there was never a thought of like, all right, well, I'll hold back 2.3 from this clutch, and I'll hold back 1.2 from this clutch. It was always just like, oh my gosh, I have so many more now. Awesome. I'm that much closer. So it's definitely like interesting. And then like letting them go, you're like, man, you and as anyone should, like, you get really selective about where they go, who gets them. And it's just, if like, I remember when I sold my first scrub python, it wasn't even one that I produced. It was such a strange feeling. It was at a show, and the person, like, was obviously very competent. And when they walked away, I was like, the snake was going to do a good home, but I'm like, ooh. It's
like an empty nester type of feeling.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever did that.
There goes my child.
Yeah. And now it's something that I very much enjoyed. But like, that beginning, transitioning from like building the project to the project being established is definitely a mindset shift.
Yeah, and I think it shows too, like that it shows when you've got that kind of, when you've got the mindset of it being a long-term project, you really don't want to let any of them go, because you want to see how they turn out, and you want to see how they're, what's their feed response like long-term, what all these different things, and just learning about them. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I can always tell the difference when somebody's just like looking to sell, as soon as they've produced something, it's like, this is not a long-term type of thing. What is this? Dirty Ryan.
Damn, I do believe that was.
Oh, is that in reference to my
there's a little bit of a delay on the comments coming.
On the comments,
definitely lines up. So, damn, the one person
I just got to hold my head in shame. I knew he would dog on me for it.
I mean, you know what?
Hey. So what's funny, he's in. If you're a chondro breeder, I think he's in all of our heads enough with that to where. I literally, as I'm pairing the snake up, it's almost like a what would Ryan do?
Yeah,
but like a little Ryan's floating over your shoulder.
He's over your shoulder, like, man, you'll never be the Python king.
Disgusting.
You'll never be the king. My gosh. Oh man, did you see that female that he posted up the other day? Northwest, like a pulcher that looks better than like 95% of designer chondros. out there?
I'd have to look at it. I don't remember that one in particular. He's got some amazing. Yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts on a lot of the stuff with the designer. Most of it, I mean, some of it is cool, and I know people get upset about it. It's not really. Most of them are not my thing, but I've always liked the Aru Beox. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to continue doing that project. That was the first that I produced was a Beox cross in 2020.
Okay,
and I think as far as the kind of designer or locality cross projects, that one to me has always been one of the coolest looking ones, the yellow ones. So yeah. Double whammy right there. But yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on here. And then as far as now, just starting to last few weeks pair things up and starting to see some activity already, which is good. I did have a female that had been breeding last year that I thought was going to ovulate before the end of the year, but she waited until like I think the second or third week of this month.
Oh, cool.
So she ovulated. So yeah, first ovulation of the season. So that's the earliest I've ever had a female go. Usually they're, yeah, exactly. I mean, latest in a lot of ways because they were breeding for basically a full year. I mean, from the initial lock that I saw, it was like a year later.
What? No shit.
Mm-hmm. She just wasn't. I mean, he was trying, but she clearly wasn't ready.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, but I mean, they did lock up. They were locking off and on, and then finally I saw that shift in her where she started showing signs. And I'm like, all right, well, I was on the cusp of just giving up on that pairing and trying them again, and next year or something.
Yeah.
But that's why it's always important to just check, pay attention to the signs of what the animal's doing and not be rigid with the schedule. Schedule is good to have for a guide, but the animals ultimately are what's guiding everything. Yeah. So.
Oh, no doubt. So you normally kind of start pairing up around this time of year.
Typically December, January. I'll start fasting them in November or so. Again, just based on what the weather's doing, I'll start fasting them in usually November, and then pairing them up sometime in December. And but a lot of times I don't see much action until late January. So it's like it's kind of following the typical timeline.
Cool. Do you do those early pairings kind of like the thought being the female will, smell the male, and then that might kind of trigger some hormonal responses, or is it kind of like, if they go early? What are you
both is to see, if I see one that's showing signs of already developing, then I'll pair them earlier than that. So like I've paired them. I think I've paired once or twice where I hadn't even started the fasting period yet, because I saw, signs of like I'm thinking with Amarella's litter, it was like in October, and I saw the male that was near her was just like running laps, like he was going crazy, and she was looking thick. I'm like, all right, let me just put them together, and it was like a near instant lock.
Yeah.
So basically, again, always just paying attention mostly to what the animals are showing you rather than the schedule itself.
Sure.
But that said, the schedule, I mean, there definitely is an overall general schedule.
Yeah.
So I see most stuff. Yeah. Most of it starts around now for me.
Okay.
They start kicking in, and how long that takes before they ovulate has varied. Some females go as early as like April, May. Some of them haven't gone till August. I think the latest was I think August is the latest I've had an ovulation.
Okay. Damn. Yeah, but that's wild.
Yeah, a lot more variation than I would have thought. I'm imagining as the years go by, I'll have probably at some point have an ovulation in every month.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so of the 10, off the top, do all right, there 4 of them were in April, and then 3 of them were in May, and then there's boom, boom, boom all over the place here. Like
most of them, I think most of mine have been May through June.
Okay.
And then I think I had 1 or 2 in April and 1 or 2 in August, and then I've had this one in January now.
Okay.
So, and then the rest of the ones that hopefully will go this year, I expect they'll probably be in that April, May, June time frame. Just based on how they look, where they're at the moment.
Do you have any thoughts as to why the ones that went off schedule did that?
Well, I would say so. This female, this one that went in January, she was the youngest. I'm assuming youngest she was a walk-on animal. I had her for like, what's he saying next thing you'll be doing? ETB hydrant. I have no plans on that. You can yeah, I'll never say never, I guess, because I don't want to look like a total jackass.
I mean,
but
you
I have
got
no
the one
plans
basin.
whatsoever.
You can't really breed one basin to one bit, to itself.
Oh, I know, but I'm not. I don't plan on them. I do think they look cool. I just don't really. To me, like the Aru Biak stuff is distinct enough to where it's like, okay, this doesn't really look like either of them, and especially when you get into the second and third generation, I don't think there's a whole lot of room for that to get mislabeled. You can't control that, of course, but I don't think there's too much confusion there. Whereas with the hybrid, the emerald hybrids, they tend to look more like a crazy northern, and I could absolutely see people, just trying to say it's a pure high white northern or something.
Yeah, sure.
So, but again, I'm not too. I'm like somewhere in between. I'm not quite as far of a purist as Ryan is there. So, but so yeah, where was I? Oh, with the female. So the female that went in January. So she was definitely on the smaller side, and so I think it may have just been a size thing with her. Like she just wasn't quite ready. It's hard to say for sure. I mean, he went straight forward when I put the male in, but he tends to do that with basically every female I put him in. So, I don't think he's concerned where they are in their cycle. He's just concerned with doing his thing. So, but she put on a significant amount of size, which was interesting. Like I fed her a couple of truly huge meals, and the amount of size, I should have actually weighed her before and after, over the course of a 6-month period. But I mean, she basically went from eating, a medium rat was a plenty big meal to where now she can take a full-size large rat, no problem. And it was like 6 months difference. Damn. I think that seems to be the case where, I see it in the juveniles too. It's like a huge meal and then a good space of time before the next meal seems to make them grow quite well. And then their heads to me look like they're more like appropriate size. And it looks more like what the wild ones do.
100%. I see the same thing to a T with scrub pythons, and
pinhead syndrome.
Yeah, usually it's like the transition from a small rat to a medium rat is a pretty big one, and then medium rat to a large rat is when they become go from being a sub-adult to being an adult.
Yeah,
the whole body changes. It's pretty remarkable.
Do you know, like, is there like a definitive physiological thing that occurs based on the size of the meal that, like, is it proven that it's a different kind of growth spurt than just feeding them anecdotally it looks way different. It seems to be different, but I've wondered, is that actually, pretty distinct from just, consuming the same amount of calories just spread out across a couple of smaller meals?
Yeah, I'm not sure, man. I'd have to imagine there's been some like legit scientific study done on it, but I think a lot of us keepers, and definitely for myself,
you know what I'm talking about. You see that change
over and over again. That it always works that way. When they really get a huge meal and they need to digest it, and they're like, oh shoot, all right, now my body needs to be biologically capable of doing this. They grow significantly.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. It looks the exact same thing, and just about every species that I've seen, like, it seems like there's literally just like something goes off. Like, okay, gotta bulk up now to be able to handle these new prey items.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I think with a lot of, I think with all snakes really, but especially boas and pythons, I feel like they really, really respond to that very dramatically. Where I feel like colubrids, it's a little bit more just about total volume as opposed to actual meal size and the physically getting really stretched out, and so
people tend to, it seems like people kind of don't push the colubrids as much with large meals anyways.
I
don't know if that's like or at least maybe it just seems like that. I don't know, maybe people are out there giving them massive meals, but I feel like most people are just feeding them. It's more about volume, like you said. It's just every few days or something instead of massive meals.
Yeah, I think some of them are just more prone to regurgitation, and I think like naturally a lot of these species will just have that lifestyle of eating a bunch of smaller stuff, where more access to small rodents or ground-dwelling birds or amphibians, whatever it may be. I bet if you're a frog eater, you're probably not often getting a really giant frog. You're probably mostly
Yeah.
getting smaller frogs. So
Yeah, exactly. And the nature of them being more active and a lot of them diurnal, it seems like they're just encountering way more prey items. You know what I mean? Instead of just, I imagine that's got to be more efficient to find meals than just sitting and waiting in one spot for weeks.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, so that definitely makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, then, so I want to get into the topic of the room a little bit. So,
Mhm.
You utilize this very interesting method that most people don't, of using the sun as your basking spot. And from what I remember of our previous episodes, your last room was pretty damn perfect when it comes to windows and lots of sun exposure. And your new room offers a new set of challenges. So what was it? What was the process? Did you like go to the new house, take a kind of an inventory, like, all right, this is where I want cages to be? Like, how did you plan for utilizing that same method in a completely new room?
Well, pretty much what you said. Before we moved in, I went in, took pictures and measurements and little 360-degree filming just to kind of, be able to kind of visualize where things could go, and then try to figure out, okay, working with less windows than the previous room. I have more space, but less windows. And they're also oriented differently. So the sun, those basking spots hit at a different time of day. So at the old house, they were hitting, basically warming up, it was like starting around 9:30, 9:30ish, and then peaking between, sometime between 11 to 12, and then usually ramping off from there. Whereas now I'm getting more of the basking spots hitting in the later afternoon.
Okay.
So yeah, just kind of trying to, take measurements and see what the, how hot the cages were getting or they were going to get beforehand. And then just setting everything up according to, make the best use of that, orient it so that the females that I was hoping would get gravid would be positioned so that the sun can hit them like I want. And then just trying to, basically kind of play with the distance of their cage from the window to fine tune that a little bit. And even just a couple of inches of shift, can make a several degree difference in temperature.
Okay.
So it's just kind of fine tuning it and then trying to see what the ambient temperature was going to be like, and the stability of that as well. And it's actually, the new room is better insulated. So
okay,
that is part of why I got a little too warm after we got everything set up. Because those first few weeks we were here, it was raining a ton. So the temperature outside was basically fluctuating all over the place. Yeah. And it was actually throwing me off because I kept every time I'm checking temps, I'm like, all right, it's pretty much where I want it to be. I'll make a few small adjustments, but generally I've got everything where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And well, the other thing to balance in there is how often to run the AC and when to run it. To if it is getting a little too hot, when to kick that on. So I should have been running the AC a little bit during those first couple of months, and I what got thrown off was those fluctuations from the rain outside cooling off the overall temperature was giving me a false understanding of how warm it actually was getting in there.
Okay.
And it wasn't crazy. It's not like it was like, oh shit, 15 degrees hotter or something. But it was a solid 5 to 10 degrees hotter than I would have preferred it to be for several, probably a good month there.
Wow.
And without me really realizing it, because I had, I got lackluster with checking the temperatures and verifying that they were where I wanted them to be. I was doing that for the first few weeks and getting those readings and thought I was good, and turned out I wasn't.
Sure.
So, but now, now that I've been here, and I have a pretty good, good idea of how everything's working, and it's working pretty close to how the old room was. I would prefer to have even more windows, but it's overall working pretty well. And the stability as far as the insulation being a little better, I like that.
Yeah.
So now I'm not getting really unexpected swings. And it's holding well with the dropping temperatures, because for us right now, we're going through, cold for us, not for you guys, but for us, it's pretty cold. We actually, I think next week we're supposedly going to get into the mid-20s, which is pretty rare. Yeah, quite rare here. So I'm going to have to definitely make sure that my space heaters are kicked up a little bit there.
Yeah. So,
but go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, in that room, Are you having to run space heaters in the wintertime at night, or does it hold
Yeah.
heat from the day? You are okay.
Yeah, I run it all day actually because I basically want to make sure that because there's no external heaters on it. You remember, there's no external heaters on anything, so
yeah,
it's totally reliant on the ambient temperature and then the windows. So basically, I want to make sure that the daytime will still get up at least to the 78, 79 degree ambient, for a few hours. And if I didn't run a space heater during some of the colder days, I think it would stay like, 70, 71, something like that if I didn't. So I just basically try to keep it from going, try to keep it in the somewhere 75 to 80 range during the day at the lowest. And then at night, I don't like it to drop really below 70.
Yeah.
So it probably will a few days here, but I mean, that's no big deal.
Sure. Blip on the screen, all things considered.
Yeah, a few hours. I mean, I know people panic sometimes, especially the newer keepers will panic over a slightly cold temperature, but the reality is that, they handle it fine.
Yeah.
But I'd always prefer a slightly cool temperature than a blasting, spike of heat that you can't control, because that'll kill a snake real fast.
Yeah, I'm always far more worried in the summers than the winter about extremes. That's no doubt. Also, it's generally speaking far easier to warm a room up quickly than it is to cool a room off quickly too. Yeah, especially, I mean, if it's hot as hell outside, you open the door, what's that gonna not gonna do much. You can let some air out, but if it's bringing a ton of hot air right back in too, all you can really do is circulate and hope.
Yeah, exactly. Cool it down a little bit, but so it's overall been working pretty well. I don't think I'll have to do anything. We've had pretty cold temperatures a couple of days here and there, and the room's been fine. I think the lowest it's gotten down was probably last night. I think it went down, looked in there, it was 70. So
okay,
but the humidity is low, which is annoying. I always hate when that drops down low, because of that space heater running. It's like 35%, which I know for some people that's what they do normally, but for me that's super low. So, but that's part of the benefit of just keeping the humidity in the enclosures nice and high.
Sure. So
that doesn't really have much of an effect.
Yeah, no doubt. So when the females are basking in that sunlight, what temps are you reading on them during that period?
I really don't measure it much anymore because it was making me neurotic the first year that I was doing that. I was just going too crazy with it. And getting really, panicking about it. But when I was checking it regularly, I think the highest I'd ever read was around 98.
Okay.
But most of the time it's like high 80s, low 90s. You know what I mean? 88, 90. Always basically just depends on how high it depends on the position of the enclosure, to the window. If it's butted right up against there and it's a really hot day, it might penetrate enough to where it's, easily in the mid 90s. I don't think it's ever gone above 97 or 98. But it may have, and I didn't measure that. Sure. Like I said, I just kind of stopped worrying about it once. Another one of those examples of just, trusting what the animals are showing you rather than obsessing over numbers. Because I was, the first year that I did that, I had the one gravid female anaconda phase. Was that maybe it was the second year I was doing it. First or second year that I was doing that. And when I temp gunned her and she was like 95 or 96 one time, I'm like freaking out. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to end poorly. This is going to go bad. But, I just kept paying attention to her behavior, and it's like, well, she seems fine. She's not showing anything that is alarming to me. So, why freak out about what the number on the gauge is showing rather than what the animal is showing me. So, and it's just coming to the realization that, even if it peaks pretty high, it's not doing that for more than maybe 2 hours tops.
Sure.
And usually not even that, so, but that's generally what it is. And what's interesting about doing that with the sunlight like that, they seem to use it a lot more efficiently. So rather than, what I've seen, anytime I've had a female that had an external heater, an ultratherm heat mat or a heat panel, they're spending a ton of time under it, you know, and they just don't do that with the sunlight. They just seem to spend it, hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 or 4 at the most, and then they're done. They shift away from it, and it just literally looks like a battery. They just go charge up, move away, and then they're content.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case with a lot of these, females that people are not giving actual hot enough basking spots to, where they just they can't recharge fully, so to speak, and they just hug that all day and screw up the entire kind of flow of what they're supposed to be doing during that point of time.
Yeah, and I think it probably, I don't know. I know there's some degree of argument of how effective the heat panels are as far as penetrating the tissue and all this and that. Yeah. I'm not qualified to say that's exactly what's happening or not, but it does seem, again, it's an anecdotal thing, but I think probably most people have observed that they don't seem to be able to interpret and understand, or maybe they can't control their thermoregulation as well as they seem to be able to do from like a bulb or the sun. It kind of reminds me too of like the old heat rocks. You know what I mean? Like, you would think the snakes would know to move off of them. Yeah. I can feel the snake and it's clearly cooking hot. And when I had that happen to a ball python, but it didn't know. And it's easy to write them off as like, oh, they're just stupid, but I don't really think that's the case. It's just something about that feels different, and it's not registering the same way that the natural or a more natural heat source does. Sure. So not that you can't use panels and that stuff, you can, but I think you just have to be more, you got to pay more attention. I'm always recommending people, like, if you're going to use them, just don't run them 24/7 like that, and try to kind of find a nice window where you can get it warm, run it for a few hours, and then kick it off.
Yeah, that's
at all possible.
That's what I've been trying to do this year, is try to find that happy medium where I can still use them. They serve their purpose, but then I don't experience the pitfalls that you get with panels, because I have quite a few. I mean, I probably have 50 to 60 heat panels in my car. I got them.
Well, because they obviously can work. I mean, it's you just have to be. I think the thing with it is, if you're overusing them, you're probably gonna have pitfalls from it. You're gonna have some downsides. Yeah. But if you are a little more careful with them, and everybody's got to work with what works in their room and their enclosures and everything like that. So, I've used them in the past. I had 2 successful chondro clutches when I had those females in heat panels. So, and I didn't have, I've never actually kept but I don't think I've ever had an emerald under a heat panel. The only cages I had that had external heat sources where the females were gravid was the first 2 litters that with Artemis.
Okay.
She was, but they were ultratherm heat mats, set up one above and one on the side of the enclosure, and she was just hugging that nonstop, and it really didn't work well. Yeah. What did he say? He hates heat. What else do I hate? I don't hate PVC perches. I use some. I would prefer to use natural branches, but I know for a fact that it would just be total mold city with the humidity. Although I probably could, seal them and do all that, but I haven't done it yet. Maybe at some point I will. But yeah, I do hate a lot of things, but PVC perches isn't one of them.
Yeah, and you hate going to Tinley to take up Steve's offer of having Dennis buy you a steak. So
no, I mean, at some point I'll probably go to Tinley, but right now I have no plan on it.
Damn.
I did go to the first one.
The first ever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 2001. It was October 2001.
Nice. Well, what was that like? Did it feel like a special new thing, or was it kind of like just starting up? Like, what was that like?
Kind of both. I mean, I had already gone to the been going to the National Reptile Breeder, NRBE, the Orlando and then Daytona shows. Yeah. So the very first one didn't feel as established as that, but you could tell it was going to be a good show. I mean, it was already pretty good size, and it seemed like the plan was for it to be on that same level as what the old National Reptile Breeders Expos were. So it was pretty cool. It was a weird time. It was right after 9/11, so it was like interesting experience flying. Like because that was when you had dudes with the machine guns, in the airports, and it was kind of an odd feeling. And my friend snuck something on the plane that we were very nervous about. So it was a nothing too crazy. It was just some herb, but it was an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so it was a cool show. And then at some point I might go to the other ones, but I tend to be a homebody.
Yeah. But you did make it out to Daytona, so that was.
I did. I try to make those. And then I'm sure I'll go this year. There's talk of that one finally ending, right? Because
Daytona.
There's been talk of that one ending at some point because Wayne is.
I feel like there's a good ending for at least 5 years now, maybe 6 years. But they have one. I mean, they have it advertised on the website for this year. So
I think Wayne's going to do them as long as he can.
Yeah.
I think part of it, honestly, I mean, it sounds kind of shitty, but I think people just keep expecting Wayne's not going to, be in good enough health. But he seems to be to a certain degree. He's got a Benjamin Button thing going on from what I've seen, because he looked worse 10 years ago than he does now as far as health. I'm just being honest.
That's funny.
So
I mean, yeah, it's such an institution of this industry. Like, definitely the most.
Yeah, it would be weird for it to not be there anymore.
Yeah, between Orlando and Daytona, it's definitely the most famous reptile show. I think it's been overtaken as far as the show itself goes by Tinley and probably Pomona, but there's nothing like Daytona, man. And with the second room as well, like increasing the volume of the show, there's really nothing like it.
Yeah, are other shows doing the multi-room thing?
So Tinley, they did a multi-room where they had overflow and they put it in a side room and nobody even knew that room was there. They did a terrible job. Designated that it was there. The Super Show in July and sometimes June. They're now doing the pet fair that has the aquatics and the birds and stuff like that. And then those both get their individual own buildings, but there's the reptiles are only in one space. But with Tinley, the space that they use is kind of like 3 parcels that you can combine at will in any of the orientations. So when I first started going, I think they really had the middle and the left if you're walking in the right section with the low ceiling. For anybody who's been there, they know what I'm talking about. That was the October show, and then the March show was the middle section only. And then at some point it expanded to be all 3 spaces, and just this absolutely huge room. And despite adding all that space, they did not make the aisles any bigger. So.
That's one thing I think people have mentioned before. It's one thing. It's pretty Daytona spreads out there's plenty of walking space there.
And when Tinley is well attended, between 9:30 on Saturday and about 1, good luck moving at all. You better go to the bathroom, get some waters for your booth if you're vending. Hunker down, because you're not, if you need to go anywhere, it takes a while. So
that seems that reminds me of the way the old ones felt, the old Daytona shows. They were that busy. And I mean that was a time when there wasn't. That was pretty much the only show, only major one. So
wasn't the Orlando orientation kind of in a way where if you passed the table, it was really hard to go back to it?
It's hard to remember. I think it was kind of a pain in the ass to navigate it. That was so long ago. I think the switch happened. I think the switch happened in 2000 or 2000, maybe early 2000s. I don't remember when they switched it over, so it's been quite a while. Yeah. But I remember, it was overall. It felt definitely more segmented, different little areas, and you kind of were stuck for a little bit in this section when you were walking through. But that was kind of cool because you would focus on whatever was the kind of visual focus of that area for a while, and felt like it maybe benefited the vendors. Hard to say. It's been so long.
That was always what what you'd hear about ham. I'm not sure if these days it's still that way, but like you got to go there with your cash in hand, and if you see something, you got to buy it, because if you pass it up, you won't be going back to that booth.
Yeah.
Which, man, to be a vendor in a situation like that must be nice.
Oh yeah, it
Some of
was.
the stories of back in the day at Tinley and the ball python craze. Like Mark Bailey told me one time about how the booths used to function in the height of it. I'm like, you must have just felt like you were dreaming. Like
They were making a killing. Yeah, and I mean, as much as I'm not into the ball python thing, we let No Doubt some. We were working at the importer. Me and Barry Swope and Mike Fabrizio worked there for a while too. Like we were seeing some of those probably early morphs coming through, and just didn't have the foresight to hold on to them and breed them. All the weird yellow belly shit and all this. Those were coming in so many shipments back then before they were really being picked and held on to. And stuff like Aniri boas and Aniri Colombian and Central American boas and shit too. But I don't pay much attention to that side of things. You don't really seem to see a whole lot of new morphs like accidentally making it into shipments this way, right?
Yeah,
I don't hear a lot about it, but I also don't pay much attention to that side of the industry.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I can't even. Yeah, like neither do I. I mean, shoot, dude, are boa constrictors even really imported anymore?
I don't pay. I think from what I have seen recently, it seems like Central Americans are maybe still coming in. Yeah, some Colombians and Central Americans. Surinames were still coming in. I think those are still coming in Guyanas, just in smaller numbers. Again, I don't pay a lot of attention to it, but the numbers are definitely not what they were before.
Yeah,
and that's probably a big part of it. But I'm sure also, the exporters pay a whole lot more attention to what they're sending now.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just volume. Here's hundreds of boas, here's thousands of ball pythons, and you deal with them type of mentality.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I can't even think like what the last majorly hyped ball python new morph was. I feel like now it's which new triple recessive is somebody producing?
It's the wombo combo stuff. It's how many, stacking stuff. So it's just a different thing. It's weird thinking back on, because it wasn't really that long ago when there was just nothing. The albino was the huge deal everybody was freaking out about. And those still are cool, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I still have my albino ball python that I've had for 16 years. So
yeah, they're beautiful snakes.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's so interesting to like just witness this dynamic from a distance, but like still being involved enough, considering it's within the same industry and a lot of the same people. It's very strange, and it's very fascinating to kind of witness it, because I feel like anybody who was observing, and this isn't necessarily a ball python exclusive kind of dynamic, but really any sort of species where the morphs are really heavily emphasized, it's like the bubble's going to pop at some point. It just has to. Like it has to reach a point where so many new people are breeding that the novelty is it's going to inevitably be gone, to where a project that used to take, let's say, 8 years to see through in a ball python. Okay, it might still take them much time, but there's like 50 people, 100 people trying to do it, and people get lucky, get there sooner, whatever it may be. And just, I remember when, like, I think it was a caramel albino pinstripe or something like that was like, oh my gosh, the world's first was produced. This was maybe like 2011. That for one, I mean, that wouldn't even exist anymore, because no one even has caramel albino because of the kinking problems. But like,
those turned out to be kink snakes. I
believe so, and that's why the whole ball python world went to ultramel, because I think ultramel did not have those problems.
Oh, okay, yeah, because the caramel was the one I remember. Did the Barkers have that? I think they did, right? Were they the first one?
Maybe.
Can't remember who had those, but they were cool looking. But I didn't know those turned out to be have a kinking issue.
Yeah, I believe. Or like when I was first getting into them, I mean, everything was spider this, spider that, spider this, spider that, and now I feel like it's almost like taboo to still be breeding spiders. So
yeah, that's an interesting thing there that's happened with them, because you've seen so much come out of that, the result of this big experiment of breeding, stacking genes, and you got to wonder sometimes with some of those genetic defects and issues, like is it definitely permanently tied to the morph itself, to the pattern mutation, or is it just a result of the fact that they're all being inbred and line bred and it just keeps getting passed along? It's kind of hard to say, but I guess in some cases they've done enough breedings to prove that. I pay some attention to that world because my friends, I got a couple good friends that are very much a part of that. And even though I rag on it and talk shit, I mean, I still, it's easy to joke and talk shit about it. And there are some negative aspects of that. Like there's definitely the elements of that kind of thing with ball pythons that I would hate to see happen with emeralds is primarily, and chondros as well, although it's kind of probably too late for that. When it just becomes about when it changes people's mentality about the animals to where they basically only appreciate when they don't look like they're supposed to, like that's all they care about. It's just like, give me anything but the wild type. Like, I don't care who, I didn't post it, but I had made a funny little shit talk meme about the designer chondro stuff, like about just basically like, anything but a green snake basically. And sometimes it feels a little weird because it's like, well, I mean, they're green pythons. It's kind of the point.
Yeah.
But it does seem like that's already going that route. And I would hate to see that fully go that way with emeralds. It just seems like it's weird because it's like, it seems like it's not that hard to be able to just appreciate both aspects of that. Like, oh yeah, some of the designer stuff and hybrids and morphs and all that stuff is cool, and I get the appeal of it. But why not just see it? They're just different. Why not just appreciate both of those? The wild types as well as the morphs.
Yeah,
but
it'll be interesting to see kind of, does that ever come full circle? And I doubt it will with ball pythons, but like I feel like these days, I think it's pretty universally accepted that the most beautiful corn snakes are really nice oketees.
Yeah, which has basically always been the case. Like
sure.
Those, yeah. But it's interesting. Yeah, you've got a point. Yeah, people
are into that
kind of realizing.
I think ball pythons are kind of going to suffer from the fact that, like, no matter what, you could not make an argument that a normal ball python is the most beautiful ball python. Where like,
it's pretty hard in comparison.
You can make an argument that in green tree pythons, no question. I think a really nice Aru is the nicest green tree python. Period.
Very easy. Yeah, and pretty universally, universal feeling there.
Yeah,
and emerald, I feel that way with emeralds too. Like, I think that with both northerns and basins, you've got these awesome natural variation in the phenotypes, and the totally wild ones look amazing. Line bred stuff that's on the crazier end of things. Excuse me, like what Ed's doing, obviously with the basins, and then the second, third gen Ms. Willie line stuff with the northerns, like that stuff's all really awesome too. But I think they still look like. Yeah, they still look like the original snake does. It just is a really extreme, or even like with something like, I've noticed that with Ed's alien basins, those are obviously crazy looking, but it still looks like I can see where that came. I could see something like that in the wild.
Snake with white pattern.
Even it still has that.
Like anything you'd ever see in the wild, but it's within a deviation of like maybe 30-40%, not like 95%,
Yeah. And even, some of the craziest ones, you wouldn't see that in the wild, I don't think. But some of them, it's like, some pretty wild shit comes out of some pretty wild looking shit comes out of the wild. I mean, if you look at like Arus and stuff as an example, and even some of the high white northerns and emeralds that have come out of the wild, there are some pretty extreme examples that occur and make it all the way to adulthood and do well.
The snake, Miss Willie, that started that whole lineage, is the nicest looking snake that ever was part of that lineage.
Yeah, yeah, it's
It's
really, really high white, beautiful animal.
There's never been another northern as high white as that original snake.
And you got to wonder, like, was that just a natural, second generation like inbred high white? What exactly happened there?
Some crazy, random mutation of like, boom, this one's super white now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And think of some of those crazy high white arus that we've seen. I mean, nobody's beat some of those most insane wild caught ones that I've seen.
This guy's got damn close.
Oh yeah, I was to say he's and I can't think of the guy's name. Fuck, is it Russell Grant? I want to say, or there's an Australian breeder that's worked with Aussies, and same kind of thing. Like he's making really good progress with them, the way Ryan is with the high white arus, and I think you'll eventually get there. But so far, it's like I've not, that's like everybody's still chasing those most unbelievable, wild examples. So it is pretty crazy when you look at some of those. Just think like, man, that thing survived to adulthood in the wild, looking standing out that much.
Right.
But I think that that dappled sunlight effect is probably helping them out.
Sure.
Yeah.
No question.
But so let's see what else to go on with the emerald stuff. Talked about that. I guess coming up on 7 years now, which is crazy. April it'll be 7 years since I started that project.
Wow.
So in Artemis, it's cool that Artemis was the first female I got, and she's had 3 litters, and
that's awesome.
Seems to be doing well. I was a little nervous after this litter because she took the first meal, and then I waited a week, offered her another one, and she didn't want anything to do with it. And I'm like, because that seems to be a pretty common thing where the females will sometimes be a nightmare to get back on food after a litter. But she just skipped the one meal, and then the next time she slammed it, and she slammed every one since. So I'm like, all right, well, something you didn't like that one, but thankfully back on the right track. Yeah, sure. So let's see what else. Oh, the hydration thing. I've gotten into some conversations with people about the hydration because, of course, obviously I make the jokes about the spraying. Yeah. One thing I wanted to clarify with that, I think some people might think that I believe like it doesn't rain in the wild or something. That's
of course people think you believe that. Because you do.
No, but I've had some people that's like they've made comments where it's like I think that they believe that I literally think it doesn't rain in the wild, and it's like, I mean, of course it does.
Interesting.
That's not what my point is. So but let's see what else here. Oh, on that though, with the topic of spraying and not spraying and everything. Now with your scrubs, how are you hydrating them as far as just like from juvenile? Oh, MJ says I told all rainstorms are all AI. They are. It is. It's AI.
Secret is out. You
don't believe it.
You don't believe
it's like the birds. Birds aren't real. They're fake too. All those things.
Drones. Rain is government.
Rain is an illusion.
Yes. Exactly. It's a mass hypnosis conspiracy.
Steve says, do you use sand and 150 watt deep heat bulbs? No, but it's funny. People still make some pretty crazy mistakes with the husbandry of some of these animals. I have one Biak male green tree that I named Desert Dan because basically my friend got this snake in a trade. I don't know where this woman got this snake, if it was from a pet store. I think it may have been a pet store, but it was like a baby, few month old, 6-month-old farm hatched yellow neote Biak, and apparently was literally set up in basically like a leopard gecko, like a bad leopard gecko cage.
Nice.
No branch, sand, and a little like hide box.
An emerald tree boa didn't have.
No, it was a baby Biak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Biak.
Green tree python.
Yeah, green tree python. Let me set this thing up on sand with a little hide box and no branches. Seems like a good idea. I don't know. Thankfully, that probably doesn't happen that often anymore. That's that when he told me that story, I'm like, that's some mid-90s bullshit. Like
that is.
That's like the kind of crap you'd see at a pet store back in the day. But Rico set his up. Small cage and bulb, pretty bare cage. Oh yeah. He had a bulb on those, and he got good results using those bulbs. I think the bulbs could work great. If I wasn't using the sunlight, that would be. Yeah, Ed uses bulbs too. I would go back to using bulbs probably if I was using external heaters. Like if we lived in a different area, that would be my first choice to try.
The Python God uses bulbs, so
yeah, bulbs are hard to beat. I mean, they're simple, they work, I think that I would definitely try those out.
It would just be the issue of not using a bulb that's so insanely powerful that it cooks your snake,
or blinds it. That's one thing, the blinding light thing. That would be like one, I remember, I never knew Rico or anything like that. I've only seen, basically archived versions of the website and stuff people have shared and everything. I probably wouldn't do a setup like that where it's that bright of a bulb without some kind of shade from it. But it obviously worked well for him. You know what I mean? I just think that's maybe something people are thinking about a little, or at least I'm thinking about more. I didn't think about it as much when I was younger. The fact that these things probably need to have the ability to get away from the bright ass light. At least partially. Sure. But it's like the more you look at it, the more you notice it's like, they definitely need that ability if you can provide it.
Yeah.
But
we're right about that hour mark.
Little break.
Commercials real quick. We'll definitely get right back into this, but sit tight, everybody. We will be back in a few minutes.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, Workshop Reptilium. Josh Hansen is doing things different over in his facility. He has one of the most diverse, beautiful reptile collections currently in the reptile hobby today, but he is doing things differently when it comes to enclosures, thinking outside the box, giving these reptiles bigger enclosures. I feel like it's something this hobby needs. So a lot of exciting stuff to come from Workshop Reptilium. I'm going to be flying up to his place to give you guys a deeper look into his facility. And I'm also excited to have an episode with Josh so he can explain himself where his goals are headed when it comes to keeping. Thank you so much, Josh Hansen over at Workshop Reptilium. Make sure you head over to Instagram. Make sure you head over to Facebook. Also, make sure you subscribe to him on YouTube. You can find all the links in the description below. Again, thank you so much, Josh, over at Workshop Reptilium. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Tonight's episode is brought to you by David Brahms from the Reptile Perch. If you have an arboreal species, you definitely want to make sure you are using a David Brahms design perch over at the Reptile Perch. You can get any size perch you want for any size arboreal, anywhere from hatchlings all the way from adults. Everything you see behind me is on a David Brahms design PVC perch. So thank you so much to the Reptile Perch for doing everything that you've been doing with these awesome, affordable perches for people to take advantage of. And you can find David Brahms' website in the description below. Simply go to www.reptileperch.com or just go to Reptile Perch on Instagram. And you can also see many of David's awesome green tree python projects. He's also a highly successful green tree python breeder. Been looking up to for the last few years as well. So to have his support really means the world to me. Thank you so much, David Brahms over at the Reptile Perch. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, and that's the one and only Morph Market and Morph Market shipping. One of the biggest exciting things about the reptile hobby over the past couple years is Morph Market shipping taking everything to the next level. Anything as far as reptile purchasing or selling needs can all be done on Morph Market's website. So I highly suggest you go check it out, especially if you're in the market of purchasing your first, second, or third, or fourth reptile. You can find a bunch of legitimate breeders on Morph Market's platforms. They stand very tall on representing the best breeders we have in the hobby, so don't look anywhere else when it comes to looking for your new reptile. Not to mention, if you're looking for aquatics or your next plant, Morph Market's a spot for you as well. Make sure you head over to morphmarket.com, and the best thing about Morph Market's platform, you could ship directly from their website with Morph Market shipping. Morph Market shipping has saved this hobby millions of dollars as a whole. I myself saved thousands with Morph Market shipping last year due to their insanely cheap rates, so definitely go take advantage of these rates on top of the amazing customer service that comes along with Morph Market shipping. Shout out to Darian and Zach, and shout out to the entire Morph Market team. So proud to be a part of this team. Thank you so much for Morph Market shipping and Morph Market. So excited to announce this partnership, and so excited to announce new Morph Market features that are going to be hitting the reptile hobby real soon, like live sales on Morph Market. Thank you so much, Morph Market and Morph Market shipping.
Alrighty, everybody, we are back. So back to it. Commercial break.
Back to it. Yep. So I was thinking when we were kind of transitioning there, we were talking about heating and hydration and everything else, I was asking you about the what you do with your scrubs. You know, as far as like, do you do different? You know, much different with the babies versus the adults, or do you kind of aim for a general same kind of?
Yeah, pretty
approach?
much. It's pretty similar across the board. I mean, I use substrate with all of them, and I typically spray about once a week, with the exception of gravid females, and seems to work pretty well.
With those females, are you spraying more often or less?
Yeah, I'm spraying daily. I'm just doing a light spray every day.
Yeah.
Typically, I mean, mostly like under the panel, anywhere that I'm going to get, you know, a decent amount of humidity kind of resulting from it. Kind of trying to avoid spraying them directly if I can. They're usually a lot more agitated during that period. And like if a female is basking, I'll usually wait until she goes back into her nest box before I spray, because I've definitely experienced having a female out basking, spraying, not even hitting her or spooking her, and she dips right back into her nest box. I'm like, that probably wasn't a great moment. That snake probably was very stressed, cortisol spike. She's not going to get the proper basking period today, so I try to avoid that for sure.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of a good example of like why I make a lot of jokes and just push it. Obviously, I take it over the top on purpose, just as an educational tool, but it's just to get people to think about that kind. Got a little one of the Artemis babies here.
Oh hell yeah!
It's taken out. I don't know if I always feel like it's so hard to get them to show up on camera.
Yeah,
on the live stream.
That's actually pretty decent right there. Wow, beautiful. Very nice.
So it's just 6 weeks old now.
Wow. How many meals do you have in them at 6 weeks typically?
I like to have a few. They've had 2. I think there's one there's still one that hasn't had anything because it still hasn't shed yet. The one that had that has the little like webbed mid body hasn't had its first shed yet, which is the longest I think I've had any go. I had this little guy, which I named Yulk Hogan. This one was born like I did not think this was going to do well. It was born with a really huge unabsorbed yolk. Yeah. And but man, he sat and absorbed it for like a full week, and the champ, and finally shed a few days or so ago and ate first try. I was really impressed. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about this, because I know there's probably no definitive answer with it, but I know sometimes seems to be like a thought process of like, or I guess this isn't really the best way to segue into it. I guess I'll just more so get curious about your thoughts on what do you think with regard to certain animals that are born either slightly premature or they're not good feeders. At first, how often are you seeing it really with all the species that you work with, where some of those snakes truly they're weak, probably weren't necessarily destined to live, or versus how many that just are for whatever reason not easy to start, but once they kick in, they're every bit as strong, they're every bit as robust as any others. Do you experience a lot of that with the scrubs or any of the other species that you're working with?
Yeah, for sure. I think I have it go both ways, where I'll have some babies that are born small and just like maybe their umbilicus just snapped somehow and they didn't get hardly any yolk or whatever it may be, and then they take off the same way that their healthy siblings do. And then I have some that are born and look just fine and like just don't want to eat for 6 months or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then I definitely have had some where they either come out deformed or they come out small and they just don't thrive. And usually with those I won't push it. But like I have a couple holdbacks that were born a little small, not like holy crap, this is crazy, and needed a little bit of assist feeding. Eventually took off and they're a step behind their siblings, but like not to a real crazy degree. So I think it really is a very, very case by case kind of approach as to what do you do. I have one Barnack now that it didn't eat for a full year on its own, and man,
As a juvenile, like from birth?
from birth, yeah, from
Okay.
birth. And I would say with scrub pythons, and I'm not sure how this is with emeralds, but like typically speaking, if they get onto food and then they're doing all right and they go off of food, with the exception of like a gravid female or a really, really overzealous male, but I've never had a male scrub go off food for breeding the way that sounds well. The animal is in deep trouble. Like they do not go back off of food for any reason that is neutral or good.
What are you finding with that? Do you think it's, because this kind of is getting into where I'm questioning with this. Do you think that is like a physiological, like some kind of physical issue with that animal, either from underdevelopment, some kind of a developmental problem, or do you think it's more of like a psychological issue where it's like it's just shut down from whatever stress factor or something that triggered it to get into that kind of shutdown mode? Because I think we all have seen an animal go into that where it's just like it's shut down for some reason.
I honestly can't say that I've seen it with a captive bred scrub, but with wild caughts plenty of times. And my assumption is that a stressor triggers an underlying health condition or some sort of overload of stress that just derived from being wild, that it just happens. So
to clarify, so we're talking about, you're talking about an animal that started off fine, and then goes off feed,
right?
So you don't have that with, because like I know they were just talking about that on Tuesday's show with the chondros, where you'll have some baby chondros, and I've had that for sure, and I've had a couple emeralds do this where they'll start off, they're eating fine, and then they go off for some reason. And it's more frustrating when they will start and have one meal, or sometimes it's a few. It's usually it's usually like what think I've seen the most, both with chondros and emeralds, is where they'll take the first meal and you're thinking, okay, cool, this one's off to the races, like perfect, awesome start. And then for whatever reason doesn't take the second one.
I've had that for sure. But
okay, so you're more so talking about like a somewhat established animal.
Right. Let's say an animal that's had 10 meals. Because I've definitely had that. Like, you know the difference between a baby that will eat something in the right circumstances and one that's waiting at the front of the tub. I'm talking like once they're at waiting in front of the tub. Because I'll have some like, okay, like the first meal it took was a fuzzy mouse, then doesn't want to do fuzzy mice anymore, and then it'll do a button quail, and then it'll do a few button quail, and then the next button quail is like, then it'll do a softer. Like that to me is far from an established animal. So, but yeah, once they're like solid eating routinely, waiting, it doesn't matter what the item is, they're taking it. If an animal like that goes off of food, it's usually like red flags start flying, like what's going on with this thing.
Okay. And you're talking about, I guess you're talking about something that like not when something like an animal's gone through a significant move or a shipped or something like that. More so just like if it's settled and there's really no external factors, and then all of a sudden it goes downhill. Yeah, I would agree. In a case like that, that's definitely an alarm. It's like what's going on with this thing. And with some of those, you got to wonder. Like I know there was talk, I think, with chondros. Was it? Well, I've heard it with a couple things I'm thinking of here. So with chondros, I know there was like talk of a few different, I think, bloodlines before, where it was like the I don't know if it was female specific. Kind of feel like it was, or maybe I'm mixing this up with something else, but it was like the animals almost seemed to have like an expiration date. It's like in the 3 to 4 year old range. It just seemed to be crashing. And then one thing that made me wonder about this is maybe when you have an animal like that. What was that?
Was it maybe lemon tree?
Might have been lemon tree. Yeah, because it was one of the designer lines, I think, and it was like they were known for just crashing after a certain period of time.
Yeah, females in particular. Yeah,
that's probably what it is. If it was that, because I can't think of any other particular line. And that aren't the lemon trees basically gone at this point? Like there's really none left.
There's a handful from a clutch that Patrick had produced from positive animals that went into his positive group that were forest originally, that were from an outcrossed lemon tree pairing. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason why you don't see lemon tree around anymore. There's like less than 10 individuals probably represented in the entire country from that lineage, when every other, I mean, not every, but many other old school lineages are still
going to this day.
Yeah, might be more diluted or crossed into this and that, or new locale blood introduced, but like they're still around, you know. But yeah, the lemon tree, yeah, the females in particular definitely had quite a few problems.
And now what's interesting with that is, doesn't that sound, and I don't have really any known experience with parthenogenesis with any of mine yet, but with parthenogenic clutches and litters, don't those babies tend to do something similar, where they a lot of times seem to have almost like an expiration date where they live just a short period and then that's it?
I feel like it really depends on the species. I think there's some species that do fairly well, like a lot of parthenogenic monitors seem pretty indistinguishable. I think in general, though, yeah, I think generally speaking, you know, an animal being born through parthenogenesis is not a great addition to the sales pitch of why somebody should buy that animal.
Yeah. No, I just was more so wondering, like, I'm just curious about why, what, you know, is it just a particular gene or you know,
yeah, I mean, I'd have to
that's
imagine
causing it, or, you know, what it is that's happening there.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine it's probably some sort of combination of a deleterious gene and inbreeding, or a handful of genes. Yeah, something going on that just
something.
Whatever caused this. I mean, because the thing is, like, extreme phenotype and robustness usually don't go together.
Yeah, it tends not to work that well.
And the lemon trees were of the most phenotypically extreme green tree pythons ever. I mean, the females turned white when they were gravid. Like, that's not really a thing. There are very few do that, and they would do it with routine. So they were on the and that's why even something that has like 12.5% lemon tree blood is still a very valuable green tree, because it was such a potent lineage. But then if there was any that would have coincided with you know, poor viability, I guess it makes sense that it's some of the ones that were the most extreme phenotypically. Yeah,
it seems to be the case. And you got to wonder, so if it was just a sex-linked thing where the males tended to do fine, like, is there any way to breed that out, or is it just, you know, I guess it's such a long project, it'll take quite a while to figure that out. But
yeah, I mean, I think with that, you know, I probably because there would be enough of a will within chondros. But like, let's look at the desert ball python, for instance. Male deserts were fine. All right, here we go. We got the chondro historians coming through, Brian Fisher. I don't believe lemon trees were very well outcrossed and were tightly bred early on. So
yeah, maybe.
I mean, it could have been that.
Hard to say.
If it was that plus some genetic defects, then that's going to really accentuate it quickly. Because Brian, if you still are with us, which I hope you are, when was that lineage founded? That would be an interesting piece to add to the discussion, because I mean, none of this could have been, you know, chondro breeding is a thing as of the last 40 years or so, maybe at best. So how many generations in could one have truly gotten with a project? Like, you know, there's no way there's like F6 lemon trees. So like, after how many generations did the problem start to manifest? That'd be kind of something we'd be interested in. So
late 90s, we could be
90s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I have no. I don't know my history that well on that stuff.
So in a 20-year period, they basically fully disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not from a lack of trying. So,
although Ryan's probably got a smile on his face.
Like, yes.
He's like, good.
Get rid of those things. No lemon trees anymore. Yes.
No, but so yeah, on that stuff, I guess one of the other things I'm curious about, just as you know, and I'm sure you see the same thing as you produce more babies, trying to get my head around, like, all right, you know, you kind of, we tend to classify these babies in general really on their confidence level. as far as feed response. You've got your very aggressive, very confident ones. You've got your kind of mid-range. Yeah. You've got your somewhat shy, and then you've got the just absolute runner, totally, tucking their heads. They're either tucking their heads and want nothing to do with it, or they
don't even think that food exists. It's like food doesn't register to them as a thing on this planet.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to it's like I want to get past this point of just accepting that as it is and try to understand, like, all right, is this primarily a psychological thing with those snakes, or is it truly like are they truly genetic defects where they just can't thrive, or those individuals are not going to do well?
Yeah.
It kind of seems to me, the more I'm observing, at least with the emeralds, it really feels like it's a confidence thing. And if you can figure out how to approach them the right way to not freak them out so much, because it's like if you look at the animal's behavior, it's just like it's just so terrified by anything basically.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, you could make the argument, well, like, oh, that's not going to do, that one wouldn't do well in the wild. But on the other hand, you could be like, well, it's going to probably hide from predators pretty well. And it's probably not going to lunge at something that's going to end up killing it and eating it. Whereas some of the more bold animals seem like they, would just basically launch themselves at anything that moves and figure out whether it was a good idea later, which could be deleterious in the, in the wild. But yeah, I'm trying that because as I've gotten a few babies that were terrible runners to initially to take a meal seemingly by just figuring out where that kind of sweet spot is as far as enticing them, agitating them just enough to where you get a response out of them, but you don't just send them into that mode of just they're fleeing and they're turned off.
Yeah.
So I've been trying a few tricks with these new babies that seem to be working well with that. Okay. Part of the difference is switching to trying live for these first few meals. Because I was always doing frozen thawed to start them,
sure,
at first, and which I like because it's like, and you don't have to transition them. But yeah. I think there's a few benefits to starting them off with live. I think Vin and Kenny had kind of put me onto that idea of like, kind of kickstarting the gut biome with some live, live meals, and kind of harden them off that way and then switch them. So I'm trying that out, and they definitely, some of them respond quite a bit better to that. And I wonder, when does this PM put magnesium in their water? Yeah, I mean, you got to wonder with some stuff like, and it is another question. Like, could it even be something in some cases where that particular animal has like some mild deficiency or maybe severe deficiency, just happened to be, so it's not necessarily a genetic thing. I don't know. It's interesting.
With where we are now, there's no way that any of us would be in a position to even try to test for something like that with a snake.
Oh no, yeah, I mean,
definitely interesting. Because I feel like there are two kind of ways you could look at it. I think a lot of us with species that are, F1, maybe even F2, a very easy explanation for, okay, why don't they want this domesticated rodent or whatever, is that this is not what it's eating in the wild.
But
Look, a pretty easy hole in that argument if one of their siblings is like, yeah, cool, hopper mouse. And then once you're multiple generations in, then that issue definitely is no longer, if it's
not the norm anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really as common.
If the last 3 generations of this animal's bloodline were exclusively fed on these domesticated lab rodents, then it would not make, like, the argument just wouldn't pan out that the reason why this baby doesn't want to eat this mouse is because that's not what it eats in the wild. It's like, all right, well, that's what its parents ate and its grandparents and its great grandparents. So if you believe in the epigenome, you would kind of immediately be like, well, all right, well, it's probably not the case, especially if there are siblings that are eating that same prey as well. So,
and on the same hand, from a behavioral standpoint too, like they're probably, I mean, they're obviously they're getting domesticated in the sense that they're getting more accustomed to the enclosures we keep them in and to the experience of dealing with a human being and not necessarily being as terrified by it. not being as terrified by the process of presenting prey to it. All those kind of things probably are playing in. Yeah, it's definitely one of the things I'm trying to get my head around, and you know, because it's frustrating as hell if you got a little baby that like, it's like, you look fine, why won't you just get with the program? And I definitely, the live thing, I don't know how much does that really impact the scrubs, or are they,
well,
I feel like, do you deal with a lot of real pain in the ass?
It's
Neonates, or not really?
It's so hard for me to have a good, well-rounded perspective on this, because from my first clutch of scrub pythons until my most recent, I've always been breeding rodents to one degree or another.
Oh yeah.
I've never started a scrub on live.
Okay. All right. So you've always done that. Yeah. Okay.
My Highland clutch in 2020.
So you never started on fresh killed, even just always live straight away.
Yeah. Because I got some advice from another breeder early on that, like, you know, he didn't breed rodents, but he said that he would always just start his babies on live fuzzies for at least the first meal or two. And I was like, well, that's super easy for me. I just walk over there, grab a handful of live fuzzies, walk over here and go, okay. But I had my Highland clutch in 2023 that just did not want to eat anything. And I had a couple that started on, I had another friend who had a Highland clutch at the same time. And he said that he got a bunch of his to eat a frozen thawed pinky rat covered in chick down. And I was like, all right, I guess. I think I had like a couple of them eat it and then not eat it another time. Didn't really work well for me. And then like baby quail, frozen thawed baby quail. But now that I breed quail, I'll just use a live baby button quail for a stubborn feeder, and it works a lot better than a frozen thawed. So, and you know, that there's a lot of movement going on with that feeder right there, as much as it's like, you never, like, I feel like if you get used to, or you get to the point of like having no feelings about doing a live feeding, you're kind of a psychopath. But particularly with a little baby bird, that's rough. I'm just like, okay.
I'm trying to remember if I've never done that actually. Yeah, I'm a softie with that shit. I don't like feeding I don't even like what I'm having to feed the live hoppers, but you know, it's got to be done. It works. It works well.
So damn cute, but but I don't know.
That would be
like, oh, this neonate that I've worked so hard to produce actually took its first meal. I'm like, okay, thank you very much for your service, little baby button quail.
Sayonara.
Yeah,
that's one of those things. Yeah, that's part of the reason I didn't do live for a while, because I'm like, I originally was kind of planning to try to just like, all right, I don't want to feed live in any circumstances unless it's absolutely necessary. But you know, oh, Lisa says joking about the magnesium. Oh no, yeah, I knew you were joking. I wasn't saying like, oh, let's start supplementing them. It was more so a question of like, would individuals within the same clutch or litter potentially have some kind of deficiency that is affecting their psychology, or is affecting their feed response just right from birth? Because you got to figure, clearly not every single one, not every single animal in a clutch or a litter is getting the same nourishment during the development process.
Inevitable.
So maybe that's it. Could we fix that with something? I don't know. I'm definitely not saying start loading them up with whatever weird ass supplements. I mean, there may be people that know what they're doing in that. I know, like, didn't Vladimir, the famous chondro breeder, I think he was doing some supplementation, at least of the gravid females, or maybe it was after. I don't want to misquote. It was either before or after they had a clutch.
I would assume after, considering that dosing while gravid would probably be extremely difficult.
Yeah, not while, but like before. Like I couldn't remember if it was like right before, like if it was, when the timing of it was. But you're probably right. It was most likely after they lay to kind of replenish them. Yeah. And it would be interesting to see if there's a methodology there that would be consistent and reduce the number of babies that are difficult feeders. But a lot of work, so much work still to be done on things like that.
Yeah,
and I'm definitely not qualified to start supplementing and doing guesswork like that.
But even approaching it as a subject that could have a solution is the first step. Where I feel like forever just like, oh, you got to clutch a 10 or a litter of 10. Hey, if you get a baby or two in there, that's tricky. It just is part of the game. And it's not like it's not, but there's obviously a reason why. And, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
Explore a thought process as to why that may be.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with stuff. Like I definitely, it's not like you're never going to get to a point where it's like, oh, every single snake that hatches out should be expected to be perfect, and every, or is born is going to be perfect. But trying to get past that, just like writing it off as like, just happens. I think sometimes it'd be like, well, but there might be a reason we can do something about it, why it happens. And, or at least have a better understanding and start to approach a different solution to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been.
The other interesting part of that conversation is, if you're going to take the approach of intervention, when do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
When is that sweet spot of not being too soon, where maybe this one did just want to take 8 weeks, whatever it was about this animal's biology, it just didn't eat until it was 8 weeks old, or you wait to the point where they get that first dose of protein and it overwhelms their system and they die.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing.
Way too weak. So
yeah, and I made a joke the other day, yesterday or the day before, the stupid Food Zero ad. That was aimed at good old Joe, because I think he posted something about giving them, waiting 4 months and not trying to feed. And I know some people do that. I guess
not trying to feed.
I don't think he tried to do anything. I don't think. Well, no, he probably tried to feed, but he didn't do any kind of. He didn't try to do assist feeding of any kind with the whole litter. So I think he had a. If it was a whole litter, if it was just one single one that didn't eat anything, and it had been like 4 months or something, and had not attempted to assist feed. I guess it gets into an interesting discussion. I mean, I didn't mind shitting on him because I don't like him.
No, we never mind.
And I saw his profile, and he had a bunch of really idiotic propaganda shit that he was posting too. So now I really feel vindicated there. But
I'm curious now.
Yeah. But that topic of when to start, when they have if they're not willing to feed, when do you start assist feeding them? That's another thing I'm trying to do a little different this season. I previously would give a baby like that a good 6 to 8 weeks, as long as they'd shed. Now I do have the one. It's been basically 6 weeks since that first litter, since the second litter from last year. So they're 6 weeks old now, and I have the one baby that should shed any day now. It's the one that was born with the little webbed section in the mid body. So if it doesn't shed in the next couple of days, then I'm going to go ahead and just start assist feeding it anyways, regardless of it not shedding yet. Yeah. But the other one, Yolk Hogan, I waited for it to shed. Yeah. And I was right on the verge. I was expecting to have to assist feed that one, but he took, surprisingly. It took a little effort and teasing, but that's one thing on to the topic of getting them going. I've noticed I've had good luck with some of the emeralds that are really reluctant to take a meal at first when I'm presenting it overhead, like horizontally, is dangling them vertically and coming from underneath them instead. And I've gotten quite a few that just wanted absolutely nothing to do with coming from that overhead approach, and then you spend a little, takes a little bit of time, takes a little effort. I've noticed you got to kind of let them crawl on, like do laps on the perch, where I kind of keep reorienting the perch as it's crawling and trying to flee, and then it eventually stops, and then try again. And a few repetitions of that, you'll eventually get it to spin around, and like it looks like it's usually like a response that starts off as a fuck you response, but turns into a rap, and then kind of a realization of like, oh, either that or placing it in their coils, and you'll get a proper wrap without the bite.
Oh, really?
Way to approach that. Cool. I've had quite a few start like that. Their first 1 or 2 meals where they'll wrap it without the strike part of the process.
Yeah,
it's almost like you're startling them into wrapping it, basically.
Talking about tease feeding a snake on that the kind of lattice perch brought up some PTSD from my litter of hunter and palm vipers from 2 years ago.
Oh, what happened with them?
Oh man, it ended up working out, but it was a reminder of why I just really like species that are easy to start. It literally would be like, tease feeding this snake for like 10 to 15 minutes, and then it would bite and hold, and I would just stand still, sometimes for over half an hour, and it would result in a drop sometimes. I'm like,
those are the sanity questioning moments where you're like, what
like,
the hell am I doing with my life?
With a green tree or an emerald, you can kind of justify walking away, maybe if the snake isn't really looking at you anymore when it's wrapped. But with a little green viper that's just sitting there holding it and staring at you, that could drop and run at any second, you're like, I don't really have a choice but to just stay right here.
Yeah.
So oh man.
So that was just was it like tons of those kind of cases where you get a bite and a hold and just sit there and you're frozen for 20 minutes and then still drops the damn thing and you got to restart over?
Usually it didn't. Usually I could tell like when a strike and hold was gonna actually like stay, or when it was a strike hold, but like I could tell the animal was about to was gonna let go at the first. Like there was no intention of swallowing that pinky or whatever. It was just sitting there holding it and just staring at me. I'm like, this isn't good. But yeah, reminded me why I like one of the things this year of kind of refocusing the collection a little bit, taking down the numbers, was just working primarily with stuff that is fairly easy to establish as babies.
It's a very understandable. Yeah.
I don't know what it is for me specifically. I give a lot of credit to people who can have that patience. It's one of the things within this hobby that I just have very little patience for, are difficult feeding babies. I don't know why, but
I totally get it. I mean, there's definitely days where you're dealing with a couple of pain in the ass, and it really does. You're just like, okay, I mean, let's just, life is short. How much time do I want to spend watching a snake, bite and wrap and then drop or whatever? You do get those moments. So I get it. I mean, if emeralds are, I mean, you of course get some pains in the ass, but overall, I don't find them to be that difficult to start. Yeah. But there's still times where you're definitely like, what the fuck is going on here? And I can imagine that with you had quite a bit larger collection than me, and that's even more time consuming. So yeah, you got to manage your time, and the reality of it too is sometimes you got to pick, even if you might feel bad about it, you got to kind of pick like, all right, well, am I enjoying working with this species? Am I enjoying this? If you're not enjoying it, then pass that along to somebody who will enjoy working with them and feels that way about it. So
yeah, no question.
I think I can imagine. I've never worked with any of those little tiny vipers, but I always figured, I'm like, yeah, you got your work cut out with some of those things, because just the sheer size of them alone, they're so tiny. It's like, you're really.
I mean, man, like some of the baby eyelash vipers that I've seen, I'm like, what does that thing eat? Fucking hair? Like,
it's chasing. Yeah, it manages just like a rodent runs by and it just snags a hair.
I was at Patrick's house and he had some baby eyelash vipers that I think were legitimately not even 3 inches long.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What the hell does that eat? I mean, obviously, like in captivity, what the hell do you feed that in captivity?
Yeah,
Nah, so I don't know.
Yeah, what with those really just absurdly small ones? Are people doing like little tiny worms, or are they just doing like little tiny segments of a rat?
Like a fuzzy leg or something like that.
Yeah, something really tiny. Yeah, I guess it's really all only feasible thing to work with, because I guess unless you want to breed a bunch of frogs to feed off and deal with that, but that's a whole different ball game there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just very fortunate that a lot of my favorite stuff is on the easy side. And even with the scrub python, like for any of them that don't get, that don't get started right away, they're really, really easy to force feed relative to a lot of other stuff. I can pretty confidently have the entire interaction be like 30 seconds, maybe at most. So
now, what are you typically giving them to start if you're doing an assist feed?
Like a peach fuzzy size mouse, like
okay,
maybe about 3.5 grams or so. Something that'll slide down pretty easy. That, if like what I'll do is I'll just, hold it, put the pinky in its mouth, and then use a Q-tip to kind of push it the rest of the way. Something where I don't need to like be worried about popping this mouse to get it, because they're not unhinging their jaws really when you're restraining them like that,
Yeah.
Something that I can get down fast, just so that their metabolism starts kicking. I figure that if it, if their system starts firing, that eventually they're going to realize that food exists. I would say most of the time with animals, I typically will start force feeding in 3 months. And then most of the time I don't need to do it even 5 times.
Yeah.
A couple in, and I usually will just kind of keep force feeding until I see a behavior change. Like when I'm feeding and I just see, oh wow, that one's at the front of the tub. Huh, interesting. Or like if I have a baby rack full of scrubs and I grab like, I have a dozen fuzzy hoppers. I'll start putting one in with the tricky babies for like a few hours just to see, and then that one's allotted to one that I know is going to eat for sure. And if it doesn't eat it, I'll just put it in the other one's tub, and then that one eats. So just kind of periodically giving it a shot, and then but just keeping up with the force feeding. Once I get it, like it's one of those things I'm like, if I'm going to start it, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like half-assing it at that point is doing the animal a disservice. Like if I'm going to make the decision to do the intervention, I got to see the intervention through. So I typically just do it do it weekly.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm starting. So I had from the first litter, there's 2 of the babies. Well, two have taken meals willingly. One's like pretty close to being, almost fully established as far as just, eating very quickly after presenting.
Okay.
And it's had probably like 8 or 9 meals, I think at this point, 10 meals, something like this. And the other one has taken a couple, like it's not as confident. And then they have 2 that have just been assist feeding. They've just been pains in the ass. Yeah. And I started, instead of doing like, a fuzzy or a hopper, I'm just actually doing rat legs, which are small enough to just real quick pop in, very minimal stress for the assist feed. And they almost kind of just are getting to the point where they seem like they're understanding the process. It's just like kind of pop that in real quick, and then just kind of look at you like, and then finish it. And it's like, like I said, go aiming for like a 30-second or less, assist feed thing.
Yeah.
And we'll see how long they take before they get. I should try them again on a live. And actually I should try, see, that's one thing I've been just keep trying live this year, but I haven't actually been trying any frozen thawed. And I've had some that didn't go for live in the past that, would then take a frozen thawed.
Yeah.
So what is this? I dip the prey, I believe, the green trees and chicken broth. Yeah, I heard about that technique as well, and I tried that, and that worked well with green trees. I've not really had luck with it with emeralds. Scenting in general hasn't really been the technique that I bother with much. With juvenile emeralds, they just don't seem to care as much. It's worked a few times, but it also worked where it's just like it may have just taken it unscented that time too. I don't even know if the scent really. It could have just been a luck thing. It just happened to turn on that offering. But overall, like you see a pretty consistent response to like chick down, for example, with chondro babies is like a universally, used technique that seems to work quite often for a lot of people and a lot of different advice. So it's like that's a pretty, nothing's 100%, but like it works often enough in a variety of different situations where it's like that's a pretty reliable tool.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that with the emeralds in my experience. I don't really know anybody who has either, but I don't know anybody who's really put a lot of effort into scenting with baby emeralds, because they just generally seem to respond to the movement more. It seems to be more about the movement and the heat signature.
Did you think emeralds might just be one of those species that eat well enough where you would really not ever need to fully go that deep to...
Quite possibly, yeah. Because overall, you definitely like what I've had with the baby emeralds is it seems like, and I didn't have, I've not had nearly as many chondro hatchlings to compare and contrast, but I feel like the chondros have are notorious for being hard to feed, or at least certain localities or certain bloodlines or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of trouble with most of mine. Had a couple that were, a few pains in the ass, slow starters. You got to assist feed for a while, and then they kicked in. I feel like when you have an emerald baby that's like, that's a real pain in the ass, it's like it's a real pain, because most of them are pretty quick to start.
Okay.
So, and that seems to be from the, some of the other breeders I've talked to, it seems to be the case too, that you get an occasional one that's just like, and it seems like a confidence thing. It's just like, it is just unbelievably shy.
Yeah. Just like I said earlier, to me, at least with some of the scrubs, it's like, they don't even recognize that food exists. Like,
it's weird. And I wish we had enough easy access to a variety of more natural prey items to try with them to see what that response would be like with a different prey item. I've not tried any lizards with any. Oh no, actually it's not true. I tried it on a knoll with a baby emerald a couple years ago, and it didn't respond to it.
Yeah, I have my three. I have mice, ASF, and quail, and man, rarely does it does a snake go past all three and not take one. But
somebody says here, what do you think about, a few questions here. Do you think bad eaters is a heritable trait?
I think it certainly can be. I think that my personal anecdotal evidence for that would be that I feel like good feeders are heritable. Like I've had entire clutches. Like I also think that demeanor, at least with my scrubs, is heritable. But where, especially when it comes to animals that I raised from younger, whether it be, from wild caught or from captive bred, that when both of the parents of the clutch were really solid to start, that the babies, generally speaking, were pretty good as well. And then, vice versa. I've only had one instance of that though, but then definitely when it comes to their demeanor, like I've had clutches of babies that came from two parents that I really wasn't able to handle. And they were all, whether or not they would be like aggressive, they just definitely took a lot longer to come around to interaction, where it's always more defensive. Where clutches that came from one parent that had a really good demeanor were typically super chill, and then two were like puppy dogs through and through. So that seemed to be, at least in my experience so far, a pretty reliable correlation. So I'd have to imagine if that's heritable, I'd have to imagine that feeding is, like what Lisa said about she had a bad feeder green tree from last year, and that she's probably going to find it a good home as a pet. Like I think that's a very noble thing for a breeder to do, that I would assume a lot of people don't do, where if you have an animal like that takes for however long to get going, that you let it go as pet only, and try to not have those genes as part of the genetic material of the captive population in our country, because I think the chances of that going well are probably, you might not have 100% bad feeding clutch, but it's got to be something. I can't imagine it not being.
My thoughts on it would be pretty much agree with everything you're saying. The only thing I would add is to the mix would be like, okay, so if you think back to the topic of like, well, are some of the babies, maybe have any kind of deficiencies or not getting as much, nourishment during the development process, whatever part of that process the deficiency may occur at, could there be an argument made that, two really strong feeding babies that grow up to, of course, and stay that way, they're always strong feeders, they're really robust, super robust animals, is that female then just simply more likely to have a better kind of starting point for providing nutrition for the offspring, and maybe that contributes a little bit as well. But I think that that topic of the genetic capacity is interesting. Do we see, like, I know there's always been a lot of anecdotal talk of it with species that are more well established in terms of stuff that's, multiple generations into the captive breeding process. It seems like overall that's pretty clear that there's, the domestication process. Generally, you have a lot less problems with, weak feeders and stuff.
For sure.
But there still are them. I mean, I know, I don't know how common it is still with the ball pythons, but I feel like you still hear about a fair number of them being pains in the ass to get feeding. But of course, I guess that's maybe not the best example because they're also stacked gene mutations and, there's a lot more going on. I guess boas, maybe something like locality boas would be a better kind of baseline to compare to, something where there's some well-established bloodlines and localities that have been around for many generations, captive bred. I feel like you don't hear a lot of complaints about that in the boa world, but I also only kind of lightly dip into that. I don't follow it super closely to know. But that would be a good thing to look into, is like, are the guys that have been breeding, Vin would be, of course, a good resource on that. Is he seeing a pretty obvious correlation there between, how many generations in before damn near every baby's a good starter. Right. Especially it would be interesting to see if observe that with a locality or a species that was a notorious pain in the ass originally. Yeah. Like, are we going to see F3, F4, F5 Aru chondros that are super easy feeders? I guess maybe some of that has to do with how people select for for their breeding stock. Right. If they're only doing high white and they're using weak high white ones, then maybe it won't work. But I imagine most of the people that are doing their due diligence on that, I think, are selecting for more than just phenotype. You're at least trying your best to incorporate the strongest animals into the lines as much as possible.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like you can even take ball pythons as a good example of this, where and you would know far better than me, but like based on your import experience, but the reputation of ball pythons early on was that they were just a pain in the ass all around. Like, you couldn't get the damn things to eat. And I don't know if that was more of a case of big wild caughts coming in, like, were babies difficult to get feeding even back then?
So I was trying to think back on this, and it's, not to date myself, but I mean, that was, what? I mean, when my first ball python was 94. So
32 years ago.
Yeah. So my first ball python was a nightmare to get to feed. Yeah. But it was also typical adult wild caught. They were coming in at that point just absolutely fucking loaded with ticks. Yeah. I mean, those ticks from those like early Ghana and Togo shipments that I remember, those ticks were like, them shits were, it was like a horror film, man. Those things were, they're big. And like you'd get these things in with clusters of ticks that it just almost looked like some kind of weird, fungus growing on them. Mm. It was just huge gray ticks. And so they were coming in obviously in pretty poor shape. So it's no surprise that, a lot of them were stressed out of their minds and not feeding. Sure. But it was also another one of those examples of what seemed to kind of turn the corner for a lot of people, or at least I remember this with my own experience with that snake and a few others. And it seemed to be, a thing where it was a combination of trying, something other than just a domesticated rat or mouse. So gerbils and the Siberian dwarf hamsters were the two things I remember being kind of like, the secret sauce to get some of them to take. And then also, I remember specifically a lot of people back in the day, and I was doing this, I don't remember who told us to do it, but the approach to the hide box, instead of having like a hide box with a side entrance, what we were doing then was just flipping clay pots over and putting, drilling out a hole in the top of a clay pot, on the bottom of a clay pot. Yeah. And using that as the hide box, and it seemed to retain heat well. And then I remember how good of a feeling it was that first time I got that snake, Rose, to eat. It was like, she went probably 8-9 months, something like this, maybe even longer, maybe a full year. It was a long time before she ate anything, and I'm like, fuck, she's probably gonna die, but we didn't know. We also knew they could go a long time, so it wasn't like as alarming, but she was definitely starting to look skinny. And somebody, maybe it was Swope, who found out about it, probably because he was so tapped into things at that point. Somebody told us, try a clay pot and a gerbil, you know, and that's what I did. And she ate the first time I tried that. Put a live gerbil in there, and I watched her. It was like so cool. She turned out the light and then just watched, you know, put the gerbil in, and it's like a few minutes go by and that head pops out of that clay pot. And then she's looking around, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, this is like, you know, hadn't seen that kind of behavior. I was like, she's definitely interested in this. Yeah. And then grabbed it, pulled it into the clay pot and ate. And then she would eat like that. And then she eventually, I don't remember how many meals it took, but it was, you know, didn't seem that long before she was taking rats. Yeah. And, but if I remember correctly, that snake, that first one and the next couple of adult ones that I had, I think I was probably only doing live at that point and just doing that technique, throw a live one in with the clay pot and the, you know, and it was always that same behavior. Head pop out of the top once they get the scent, and then it was cool. Yeah. Super cool to watch. And, so then, but I don't remember like when I started working at the importer, and then we started having access to the bush babies that were coming in that were like yearlings or younger. I don't remember them being that hard to start, really. Okay. I'm trying to remember, probably a few of them, but if I remember correctly, the ones that were a pain in the ass, you would just get Siberian dwarf hamsters, which were at that time pretty easy to get a hold of for most of the pet stores. I don't see any around here anyways. Maybe they're still in other areas, but I don't see any at any of the local pet stores. And if so, they're probably stupid. You know, it's like they probably want $25, $30. Yeah. Which is obviously not very scalable if you're trying to start. Imagine having to feed every baby, you know, a $30 prey item or something. No. But yeah, I remember that transition was interesting because it was like you wouldn't have expected ball pythons to be this just ubiquitously bred and all these millions of morphs and to have become that, you know, universally, you know, recognized species and for them to just be like turnkey breeding programs for them. Yeah. You know, in a relatively short period of time, really, because it was like, you know, they were still, I mean, it was basically just over 25 years ago that they were still mostly not being bred. I don't remember a lot of people breeding them back then. Certainly not in the early to mid 90s. Sure. Well, mid 90s is when I started, but, and then, yeah, I guess the something, a few people started figuring it out and then having success with breeding them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if anything, that's a data point towards that domestication process being a factor here, considering that, you know, I mean, people hardly would have access to ASFs these days, nonetheless, a Siberian dwarf hamster. And, you know, rarely is it ever a problem with a ball python where you have to go to some sort of specialty feeder to get an animal going. So,
yeah, exactly. I don't even, again, I only kind of like talk to a few people that are in that world, but I don't hear much talk of the need for ASFs even, really.
Yeah. And like one that
Barry was breeding them for a while, but I don't think he bothers with them anymore.
Okay. An example that I thought of kind of during that last part was, so I was trying to think of like within, you know, what is a species that is like notoriously difficult, and, you know, how can we use it as a case study? And man, within boas and pythons, there really aren't very many. I mean, you might even point to green tree pythons as being the number one, but within colubrids, there's a bunch of examples. One that I've seen a kind of a transition in over time were the rhino rat snakes, where, I mean, from, you know, maybe to date it back to like 2012, 13, 14, 15, I feel like it was almost a universal truth with rhino rat snakes that you got to get them started on fish.
Yeah.
Babies are going to eat fish in their water bowl, and that's just what it is.
That's the way to do it. And
now these days, I think everyone's using rodents like off the rip. So,
and now is that like second gen captive bred, or is it, you know,
probably, because I don't think that there's any new blood coming in for rhino rats. So
it must be, yeah.
I have to imagine now that the animals that are being bred today are 2 and maybe 3 generations beyond those babies that like you're getting rosy reds from the store, and you're putting them in the water bowl, and that's how you're establishing these babies, and you'll switch them over to pinkies eventually. But like, yeah, perfect example. Hognose.
Yeah, hognose.
Fantastic example. Yeah, I went to rhino rats, and there was this glaring example staring me in the face with colubrids. But yeah, perfect.
Well, but rhinos is, I wasn't really aware of that. Those are cool, but I've only just kind of seen a little bit of them. I don't know too much about them at all, really. So that's interesting to hear. So you definitely have, I think, some examples of this being the case, and I guess it's probably really not like one singular like silver bullet in this. It's more just this overall domestication process of you're hopefully selecting for stronger feeding response, but then breeding stock, but
ultimately inadvertently, there's no way this was ever the intention. I mean, maybe some people, but you're selecting for snakes that will eat lab rodents.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And eventually that's what you get. I mean, that's why you can start a baby hognose on a pinky instead of having to get frogs or whatever,
Hognose is another thing. I remember that, where it was like nobody was able to breed those. I kind of forget about it, but that's another one that's changed completely, very similar to ball pythons.
A subculture within the reptile industry, all under their own. It's like,
they're
an entire sector of hognose snakes. It's not even,
it's funny. You had the same thing. It just showed you, because you're not, you get tunnel vision with the things you're working with.
Yeah.
Hognose should have been just as obvious, really, as ball pythons when you think about it. But it's just, if you're not in that world or thinking in that mindset, you can forget. There's been so much work done with hognose that it's crazy. And
I mean, they've changed the physiology of the hognose snake. I mean, a wild hognose snake is not a stumpy snake. Like, they're no corn snake, or they're no racer, but like a wild hognose snake is definitely much leaner than what you see in captivity, with a bigger head proportionally. And we see this like with Australian stuff, like bearded dragons, or like with leopard gecko morphs. You look at like an Angermanu next to a 5-gene leopard gecko, and they're just physiologically such different animals. That has already happened with hognose snakes.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, considering bearded dragons have been around for, it took however many decades for that to like really become obvious. But with hognose, you're maybe looking at 20 years at most. To become a huge thing, which is interesting.
I'm trying to remember. I think within my circle of friends, I think Swope, I can't remember if he bred hognose. I think he did succeed breeding them one time, or maybe even a few times. It's crazy. You do this stuff long enough, you forget some shit altogether, and then you're like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about I'm pretty sure he bred them once or twice, and they were a nightmare to get started, and that was it kind of turned him off from working with them, because I remember he really liked the hognose a lot too.
Okay.
When he was starting, when he was working with the ball pythons, and so I think with it, there's been a few other kind of discussion or comments here discussing that stuff. Like, I think it'll be interesting to see, with the emeralds, with the scrubs, chondros. There's already been more time put into it, but I think also the methodology is changing a little bit, like these days. But I think the approaches, like somebody had brought up, exactly. Steven said, like, what about using crested geckos? So those kind of things. I know that, like, Vin and Kenny
for tricky feeders. So
and Vin and Kenny had been doing that for years, and pretty sure there's been other people that have, starting stuff off on lizards is definitely not a new thing, really.
Sure,
like that some of that stuff is old school.
Specifically.
Oh yeah. Those specifically is different.
Which is, man, can't imagine a better option, because the biggest issue that always existed with feeder lizards was, okay, cool, you have the snake on food. Well, now you got to treat it for parasites.
Yeah.
Now with crested geckos, you don't. So
and leopard geckos the same thing.
Yeah,
sure. Same kind of stuff. And but it's funny, because some of the stuff like that it's interesting how some of those kind of techniques become a little bit of a lost art so quickly.
Sure.
Because those are the kind of things, like, I remember back in the day, it was like, I was common to just try shit like that. Like, so it doesn't want a mouse, well, then give it a frog or a lizard. Of course, that's what it would eat normally. So just do that. But we forget. We want them to be domesticated right off the bat, and we can easily forget that it's like, this isn't what this thing would eat. So, you know.
When you talk about forgotten tips, when I was first getting into snakes, one of my first mentors gave me this advice, and it ended up hearing it a bunch of places, and I never hear it anymore for a tricky feeder. Put it in a brown paper bag overnight with the feeder.
Mm-hmm.
You never hear anyone say that anymore.
Yep, nobody talks about that. Yeah, it can work very well. Even just putting them in a little, the brown paper bag thing, and even sometimes just a little, like a deli cup or something where you're taking it out of its enclosure, and basically trying to create a situation. Of course, it has to be a safe situation depending on what the prey item is. You can't do this with an adult rat or some stuff, but like a little baby, some kind of baby rodent, whether live or even just sometimes drop feeding stuff.
Yeah, and this was
kind of putting that
even like a live feeder,
Yeah, just sometimes putting them into a scenario where it's kind of like it has to keep encountering that prey item.
Yeah,
and you're almost forcing that exposure on it, and in a way potentially just it's almost like is it exposure therapy when somebody has like a phobia of something?
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. It's almost like that. It's like this thing's terrified of it, but you're kind of like you're in a gentle way kind of forcing it to encounter and deal with it, and hopefully get over whatever that shyness was and deal with the feeding. But some of those techniques you forget. I'm trying to think of some of the clay pot thing. I don't hear anybody talk about that with any.
I've never even heard that up until right now.
Yeah, that was a thing. Yeah, it would seem to be a common thing. I mean, I had heard multiple people talking about it back then, and it worked fucking great. I mean, it was just there was something about that feeling of it. I guess the way that hide felt with the vertical hole instead of the side.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, I don't know if somebody told me to do this or if it was just what I did, and it just seems to make sense. But if I remember correctly, what I did was put the heat lamp over, just directly over the clay pot when it was on during the day, and it kind of just warmed that up and maintained, whether that was a good idea or not. That's what I was kind of doing. It seemed like, okay, you're kind of heating the clay pot up, and then it would sit in there and have a nice warm hide even after you turn the light off. But even like something like one of the things that's funny for me is the night drop discussion. Now it seems like sometimes when you present the idea of a night drop to some of the newer keepers in particular, or even people have been doing it for a while, they almost react to the idea of a night drop like it's like a weird theory. Like it's like a weird concept, and it's just like
me for the longest time, and I was like, "Oh wait, the world, dumbass." Like,
it's one of those things, yeah. But the thing is, though, is it's because you grew up in a different era where people started doing that with 24-hour heat, and
that was the norm for me for the first.
Oh yeah.
Years I was involved in reptiles.
I remember when that switched because it started. I don't remember exactly when, but I remember that started getting recommended to do 24-hour heat, because when I first started, it's like you didn't even think about it. It was just common. It was like turn the heat lamp off.
Sun comes up, the sun comes down.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, of course, you just turn the heat lamp off. It's wasn't necessarily doing it on a good schedule. It was super random, but it just seemed like common sense. You just turn it off, and of course, they don't need a light at night, but. Yeah, and then at some point I remember it was like everybody was recommending, running basically the same level of heat 24 hours a day. And
especially
I think that was probably tied into that seemed like that trend, and I could be wrong. I'm just trying to remember, quite a fucking while ago now, but it seemed like that trend was also kind of going along with the power feeding thing, and it was maybe tied to like everything you can do to push that digestion as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So it was like 24-hour heat and feed them 8 times a day. I mean, not really, of course, but that kind of mentality.
I remember hearing it was a ball python breeder who was from the Chicago area. He had this like feeding thing with ball pythons where I think it was with medium rats, and when it would be feeding day, he would just literally feed the females until they stopped eating. So sometimes the females would get like 6 or 7 medium rats in one sitting. I'm like,
it's crazy.
What?
And see, with something like that, it's like, okay, There probably are some rare occasions in the wild where they may stumble across a situation where they can consume multiple food. Like, okay, so they more than likely it's going to be younger, smaller, animals in a nest or something where they can consume all of them. And they definitely will do that. I mean, we've seen that kind of thing happen. I remember actually a yellow rat snake that I caught on my back porch. I had managed to get into the back porch through a hole in the screen. And there was like some old barbecue that I guess we didn't even know we had rats in this fucking barbecue. And we had found out somehow that there was a rat in there. So I like opened it. I'm trying to remember exactly how this happened, but there was actually a yellow rat in there that was like eating. It was like it had been eating them. And I think it consumed multiple, small rats from that.
Wow.
So there's probably scenarios where that happens in the wild. But the thing is, they're not going to do that every fucking week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the kind of story they're going to tell their offspring for the rest of their life. This one time I came across a nest and had the feast of a lifetime. But yeah, people started feeding them crazy amounts of food and every single week like that, and to try to get production way up. And I think more people nowadays are realizing that, like, that's not a good idea for the long term.
Yeah.
Long term health of the animal. But I mean, I do think it's probably pretty natural for them to occasionally gorge, either on a massive meal or a multiple prey item thing.
Sure. Yeah,
but then you just give them time, give their system time to recuperate from that process.
Yeah. No
when it happens, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Did you ever do any? I don't see anybody talking about this anymore, which is a good thing, I think, for the most part. But are people still doing that like elongation power feed thing? Do you hear of anybody doing that? I don't hear anybody talking about that anymore. Where you the snake's eating the first rodent, and then you power feed it by just putting the second, frozen thawed. You just elongate as it's swallowing. You basically don't give it a choice. You just give it the second rodent. So it just like a train just continues feeding. That was being recommended at one point.
Oh boy.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And then
that. I mean, I did that with some of my colubrids that eat multiple items, but like, I don't need
a colubrid. I don't think a colubrid would be an issue, but with
the tiger rat has one down. They're like, "Where's the next one?"
Yeah. Oh, well, exactly. Those snakes are just to differentiate. There's snakes that would be thrilled for you to do that, but this is more of a situation where it's just like you're basically forcing the animal to have a second
little human centipede situation.
Yeah, that was a bit much on that, but yeah, that's one of those things that's funny. I think about how infrequently I feed compared to back in the day, and it's like night and day.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for being really frank here, I think a lot of this mentality changed when feeders got a lot more expensive.
Probably did. People, I don't doubt it.
When medium rats were $1.25, you could do that. When medium rats are $4.
Yeah, you're going. But maybe in that sense, that's one bit of silver lining to that price increase is the fact that more people are going to realize, like, it's a bit wasteful and probably not good for the animal's health long term to overdo it quite that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that people are easing back overall. It seems like that anyways. You're hearing more people to come in to realize, like, we probably overdid it for this period of time where we were slamming them with food year round.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like common sense. Like, if you're going to slam them with food, it should be seasonally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
But
what a wild world we are in.
Yeah, it's interesting how this stuff has all evolved over the years. And let me see if I can go back. There's a couple questions here about still with the feeding stuff. So what do you think about assist feeding adult mouse tails to baby Morelia? I think that I've heard quite a few people doing that. Seems like a pretty viable approach to it. Mouse legs and mouse tails.
I think that's it's an interesting kind of discussion. Like, all right, what's better, this fully formed, more adult rodent limb, or a full baby rodent? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not
I
sure
think a lot
which.
of like, well, you get all that calcium from the bone and yada yada, but then it's like, well, all right, but then there's not a whole hell of a lot else going in there. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, if it works, it works. By all
Yeah.
means. But I think that once that kind of not that kind of idea of the, you know, assist feeding tails and limb, I think especially like the limbs, it was almost seen as like a superior method than a pinky or whatever it may be. And I'm just kind of questioning whether it is or not. Not that I really have an opinion either way. I've never done the tail or foot or whatever the heck kind of.
Mhm.
I think I tried it with some of my baby palm vipers and to very little avail. But yeah, I wonder kind of what is it better to have an overall package of a pinky that's not eating on its own yet, or the leg of a mouse or whatever that's eating on its own?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I've just really kind of started playing around with it this season or this year with a couple of the pain in the ass babies from the litter in September.
Okay.
So I've been assist feeding them rat legs.
Okay.
So and I've just been doing that just basically because it's an easy, it's something easy to get them to take. It's a very low stress assist feed process. Just basically pop that in, push it down a little bit, hands off, and then they generally just they don't resist that very much compared to trying to get push a full fuzzy down or something, or a hopper.
Sure.
So that's been the main reason why I've done that, is just because it's like, all right, this is an easy low stress thing, and I'm curious to see if there's really much difference in how they respond. So far they seem to be looking fine. Like they're not showing me signs of like depleting, but those were born late September, so they're not 6 weeks old. But I'm not seeing any real negative signs from it yet. So hard to kind of say. In a way, I almost just feel like, well, if you can get them to take something, whatever they're willing to take, as long as it doesn't seem to be having clear negative effects.
Sure.
Goal is just try to get them to actually eat on their damn own as quick as possible and do what you got to do.
At that point, probably really splitting hairs, because like no snake is really going to grow on force feeding.
Yeah,
it's
not very well.
A matter of maintaining and getting them to the point where they're actually going to eat on their own, instead of like, I mean, if you grow a snake by force feeding, I want to know what you did, and I probably wouldn't do it anyway. Like, what the hell did you do?
Yeah, you'd have to be. I don't know.
It'd
be a pretty big.
The whole
pain in the ass.
Coral snake venom lab kind of protocol. That might be the only way.
What is that?
It's like this old school, like baby food plus some sort of supplementation mix. And
okay, so like some kind of liquid diet thing.
Yeah, like what the venom labs would do with their coral snakes. Get the coral snake, milk it, take it over to the feeding tube. No. See you in a month to do it again.
Oh, okay.
It's for the consistency of the venom that they're producing.
Okay.
Stable with it. So
yeah, probably not something you want to be doing on a general basis, but I guess
but
for what they're doing.
Some sort of like forced meal that would actually probably be enough for an animal to grow off of. I mean, maybe that would be the only, but like, like that, the carnivore care stuff. I've never used it, but I know people have. Like,
dude, I mean, I don't know how much potential it has for snakes, but for cats, that stuff's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Like, Ellen's mom's cat it was like about 6 months ago, 7-8 months ago, maybe now, that they were saying, the vet, the cat was regurgitating. Cats typically, as they get older, they'll have, kidney issues and stuff. And a lot of cats are chronically dehydrated because they're just really not hydrated properly through the food. And if they're not responding well to whatever the water bowl is. But that cat was refusing food, got really bad about hardly ever eating, regurgitating regularly. And the vet was recommending to put the cat down. And she's not, I mean, she's older. I don't remember if she's 12, 13 years old. But like, she was, it wasn't an uncommon expectation to recommend that.
Yeah.
But I had heard about the critical care, and we used it for our one cat when she had cancer, and it helped her for a while. But she started giving that cat the critical care, and it responded really well to it, and has been did like a literal complete turnaround.
Wow.
It's eating great. Hardly ever regurgitating now. It's doing really well. So I think in that in those cases, now can that translate to an animal that we're working with the snakes? I don't know. Maybe not. Probably depends on a lot on what's going on in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, I think my concern would be just packing that animal with way too many nutrients.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, how do you properly dose that?
Right. Yeah.
Who knows?
Not
But
me.
yeah. Let's see who else in here. So what's up, Ben? So one of my juvenile animals will only eat rats. It's probably eating 2 to 4 mice since an neonate. Yeah, some of them have a preference to start, for sure, and it usually is one or the other. Like they either will tear up a mouse every time, and they will snub a rat, which I always hate that because you want them on rats. But or they go vice versa. If they, like I typically want to keep them, or start them on mice whenever possible. In terms of the nutrition that's probably providing compared to a pinky rat.
Yeah, for sure.
But if they'll just take pinky rats and I don't worry too much about it. It's like, all right, just try to get you onto it to larger prey item size, and at least you don't have to go through that same transition. Because the ones that don't want rats can be a bit of a pain in the ass to transition them over there. But I have found I've only had like 1 or 2 that were like that didn't want to transition. And I just took mouse, just take a clump of mouse fur, put that on the snout of the rat when you present it. It seemed to work pretty well. At least for a couple that were like that.
Okay.
Let's see a couple others. So my emerald took a year. Then after that one, I eat once a month. There's going for the live though. Won't take frozen thawed. Yeah, some of them will go a long time without taking a meal, especially if it was a wild caught one. If it was a wild caught adult, although my experience with the majority of them is that I usually get them. The ones that I established, the majority of them ate, first night, and usually took frozen thawed for me. But I had a couple that didn't want anything to do with live, didn't want anything to do with rats, period. And what I found with I think it was like 2 that were like that is that they went for frozen thawed hamsters, no problem.
Okay.
So that's something to consider if you've got one. And I haven't really tried the hamsters for any of my juveniles that I haven't started any on those, but I've heard some people. I think Steve Volk does that with. I think he breeds the Siberian dwarf hamsters, those old school ones, and starts any problem feeders, or maybe he starts all his babies. I don't really remember. I think he starts some of them on those. Okay.
Yeah, I experienced some emeralds that even older ones that were really partial to live.
Oh, some of them are for sure. I was talking about just some of the wild caught ones. Didn't even respond to live. Yeah, some of them that's that can be a pain. You know what I mean? If you're trying to have your whole collection on frozen thawed, anyways. If you breed your own and you don't mind feeding live, then it's not as big of a deal. But there's still always a bit of a risk with doing live with a sizable rat. Can do, of course, some major damage.
Oh yeah, like I'd have to feed these big mediums that were live, and I'm like, you better get that first grab down, otherwise, man, you could be in trouble. So
oh yeah, absolutely. And that's something, if you've never seen a good sized rodent really attack a snake, either during the constriction process or just go after them, go after a snake that's too shy to respond, they can really do damage. They can do some major damage.
Very much
so yeah, I always try to opt for something else. That's why I had one. I don't think it was true CBB. I'm pretty sure it was just a baby that was born from an imported adult female that I got from my friend Jason Kittinger, and he raised it on live rats. So I don't know if it was just only used to that, but I couldn't get her to take frozen thawed for the life of me.
Yeah.
And but what's weird is she responded to frozen thawed hamsters and will slam those every time.
Huh.
But so it's like for some reason the movement doesn't seem to be an issue with that. But when I've tried, although to be fair, it's been a while since I've tried a frozen thaw, because you get it to take something regularly and you just kind of tend to stick with that if it's easy enough to do. So I should try some frozen thawed rats, and see if she responds to it. But yeah, the response was crazy. But let's see here, a couple other put them in deli bins. Nest rating, like the starling tree where the scrubs would gorge on baby birds.
Yeah,
fell from this. Yeah, we had one time. My friend Mike Fabrizio, his brother Chris, he had was a Puebloan milk snake, and he also kept he was breeding some kind of, were they gerbils or hamsters? I think they were hamsters. And it was like it was like a funny and also kind of sad story at the same time. But we were teenagers, so we were just how boys are, to tease each other and fuck with each other, talk shit and whatever. So we were kind of ragging on him a little bit about it, but we felt bad afterwards when we realized this was like, oh man, that's kind of a devastating story. But his Puebloan milk snake escaped from the cage, got into the hamster cage, and ate basically it ate every single one of that it could consume, and then tried to eat the others, but didn't succeed. So we were like, holy shit. Like when we heard about it, it was like kind of funny to hear about that scenario at first, and then you realize it's like, oh, that sucks. But they will do that nest rating thing. They will gorge if they can. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So let's see what else here. You ready? You got it in you to keep going, or are you ready to wrap it? I mean, I'm good either way.
Shoot, man. I mean, you're 2 hours ahead of me, but if we're there, we're there. I mean, we've done almost 2.5 hours. It's a quick podcast by our standards, but by podcast standards, it's quite the podcast. I mean, let me we're deep in it. If anyone's still listening, they can deal with a little bit of unprofessionalism. Let me look at what I have written down. No, we pretty much hit. I mean, yeah.
Oh, I know one thing we didn't talk too much about. Started to was the umbilical hernia thing.
Okay, yeah. Let's close out on that then.
Okay, so the umbilical hernia issue is something that I think I don't hear a lot of people talking about it with other species as much. I should do a little more research into it and see how common it's happening with other ones, but it's definitely a common thing. I've talked to pretty much every breeder that I've talked with, both of northerns and basins, seems to experience it fairly frequently. It's usually like, almost every litter you got one baby or maybe two babies, depending on the size of the litter. Sometimes if you're lucky, you don't have any of them, but it's like, it's definitely, there in enough juveniles and enough different keeping styles to where it's kind of it's still a bit of a mystery as to what the problem is there.
Cut you off for a quick second so that we're all on the same page, listeners. What are you classifying as an umbilical hernia?
Very good point to classify this. So that's, and I'm not 100% sure that I'm using the correct terminology.
A lot of them will have a little opening to some degree or another. So like, at what point is it like significant to you in your eyes?
Well, so I guess to try to kind of clarify here, what you see with some, you see premature babies that are born, they have a full umbilicus that's, and you've got a yolk sac attached. And those aren't always the same thing as what I would consider the umbilical hernia to be. And again, I'm not necessarily qualified to make this distinction. This is just from what I've looked into and what I believe is the case. To me, the true umbilical hernia cases, it's basically an opening that is, either opened too wide or it's not closing like it should. Yeah. Versus an animal that, not necessarily every animal that's born that has a yolk sac still attached. The opening's not necessarily the problem in that case. Often there does seem to be some, it does tend to go hand in hand when you see a large yolk sac there, but I don't think it's always the case. So what I've observed is that basically you have the kind of ideal situation that I see with the baby northerns anyways, and I'm sure it's the same with the basins when they're born, you know, for me to consider them like, you know, perfect, they're perfectly fully developed, like this is like an ideal situation, they come out and that umbilicus falls off pretty quick, you know, within the first hour, usually at the longest. Typically it's quicker than that. And that opening is already beginning to close up pretty much immediately.
Okay.
You know, that's what I like to see. Second best would be that they've got kind of a large, you know, bit of tissue hanging out, and it may take a little longer for that to fall off, but the actual opening in the belly it's closed off pretty well. So the ones that seem to be the most problematic has less to do with the amount of tissue that's protruding. It seems to be more to do with the actual opening itself. You know,
okay.
is it even beginning to close? How wide was the opening to begin with? And that seems to be from, you know, I've talked to Ed briefly about this. He seemed to have he's, you know, had the same experience with this, where they're born, that opening is there, it's not closing like it should, and those animals, you know, in his experience, it's been basically 50-50 whether they make it. Okay. He's had the best success in those cases when he was able to, basically when the circumstances allowed for it. He's had the best results when he was able to get those animals into the vet, and the vet actually you know, puts the tissue back in and stitched up the opening.
Okay.
So, but that has to be done very quickly, you know, as quickly as possible, basically, when that's happened. And it's still not a guarantee, but I think he said most of them have made it when he was able to get that, you know, get them early enough to the vet and have that happen. Okay. In my experience, what I've seen when they have that, it's been pretty close to 50-50, where it's like, I've seen ones where the opening was quite large, the umbilicus tissue that was still protruding hours after birth. Like it was bad, you know what I mean? And I've seen, you know, they still survive it. It may take a while for that to pull in and dry up. And then in some cases I've ligated to try to expedite that process. And then it eventually pulls in and they're okay and they make it. And I've seen ones that looked pretty much fine, where it's just like, man, there's just a tiny little nub of tissue protruding there. I don't even think I need to intervene. And then they roll.
Okay.
And so it seems to me like the most likely explanation there, as far as why some of those roll, even when they might not look that bad, is probably just to do with whether it happened to get infected internally or not.
Right. That's kind of my thought too, is probably some sort of sepsis type of situation.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, because specifically because it's like, all right, you know, I've seen them, and same thing with Ed. I think when Ed has tried to put the tissue back in himself, it's been like hit or miss.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, when the vet did it, they actually they cut and create a wider opening first, and that stitched that up, rather than trying to push the tissue through the kind of only slightly abnormal opening. Okay. So I don't know how often I don't think I've encountered that yet with any baby chondros, but I haven't really hatched that many chondros yet either. So could be more frequent there than I'm aware of. I don't remember hearing a ton of talk about it with just, you know, the other boa species, with like, you know, imperator or constrictor or anything. But I'm sure it's happening at least sometimes.
Could it be a factor of these babies are being dropped?
It could be.
Could there be some sort of force pulling it out a little bit because they are dropping as far as they sometimes are?
It could be, and that's one of the things I'm trying to figure out, because one of the things that, you know, the first few times that I encountered it, I suspected that, like, I think what happened was that, you know, it just had a little nub of tissue, and as it was crawling around, it like caught and snagged on it, and that maybe that is the case. Mm-hmm. But I've seen them where it's like right after birth, you can tell that opening is not, you know, it's like, you know, 10, 15 minutes after birth, you can kind of see as the animal's crawling around. It's like, okay, that opening is already too wide.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's closing yet. So whether, and that's kind of, I guess, what the I guess the biggest question is that, is this occurring from an injury during the birthing process?
Yeah.
Like something like you're saying, like, is it from dropping? Or, you know, just within the female, the physical process of being birthed, is something happening there and causing it? Or is it more of like some kind of a defect during development?
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
you know,
you'd have to think it's the third one, because it's not like these animals aren't being dropped from mom in the wild.
well, that's something I would like to know is, how far are they getting dropped?
Yeah. Do they go right down next to the ground to give birth, or like?
Well, I don't think
they aren't grounding themselves to birth in captivity, right?
I know well, so I haven't had that. I've not had that. I know I want to say it was maybe Jeremy Moore. I can't remember if it was him. I did speak to somebody who theirs did ground.
Okay.
And gave birth on the ground. And I've seen a few. I know Ed has had, he posted a video a long time ago on YouTube of one or two females that like kind of partially grounded, like, you know, laid most of their body, like basically the latter half of the body pretty much straight out, flat out on the floor, and delivered that way. So I don't know, you know, what that situation is. What I've seen so far, what to me looks like they want to do, or I guess is the natural inclination, if based, again, only based on what I've seen, it looks to me like they try to position themselves to where they can kind of, for the most part, have a baby emerge and just crawl directly onto a branch.
Okay.
That looks like what they try to do that. But of course, our cages in captivity are nowhere near the same as what they would be doing in the wild.
Right.
So I don't know for sure. But I've seen it happen enough times where just like it sure looks like that's what they're doing, is they try to aim so that they, you know, the baby comes out and will just go straight to the perch. But of course, not every baby's going to do that. And especially if they're still partially in the sack, or in a couple cases, if they're still in the sack, then they're just going to plop right out. So yeah, I don't know. And I don't know how, you know, in the wild, you know, I'm not aware of anybody that's documented a wild birth of the emeralds. Maybe, but I know the few things I've heard about people encountering what appeared to be like a freshborn litter. At least one of those was actually, you know, in the water. It was like in the it was a bunch of babies that were hanging on plants that were actually in the water right on the edge of a river.
Interesting.
So whether they just happened to have been birthed right over nearby and crawled over and got into the plants there, or they were actually delivered into the water. I've seen, I think is it High Win, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I think a year or two ago, he posted a video of a live birth of one or I think two of his emeralds. And it looked like the female had chosen to deliver the babies in a large water bowl.
Wow.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to say. There's still, I've not allowed that to happen when I could, although the first litter of Artemis, I wasn't expecting her to deliver at that point, and I didn't have a video camera set up for that first one, and she did seem to deliver it in a large water bowl.
Okay.
But it also wasn't a huge cage. There's so many factors. It's hard to say. To really be able to, I think you'd have to really set them up in something large and kind of craft a few setups or scenarios where it's like, okay, really has the choice to do a variety of options here and see what they're opting to go for more often than not. So that's why I can only really speak on what I've done with my setups, and what in what I'm doing, it seems like they're aiming for the baby to come out and just crawl directly onto a perch.
Okay, interesting.
But inevitably, several of them splat. You know.
Yeah. So then, with Yulk Hogan, how did you keep him set up until the point where you're like, all right, the snake is good to go now?
So yeah, so I took a different approach, which I think hopefully wasn't just pure luck this time, but I think had a better impact, which after talking with Ed about it, it's what I had done in the past with any of the ones that were born with significant either some significant umbilical tissue protrusion, or hernia or slash hernia, or a fairly significant unabsorbed yolk sac. I was keeping them pretty wet, and I think that's bad. I think it's bad. I was keeping them too wet, and so he suggested trying it drier. He's like, I would definitely go drier than you have in the past with that one and see, how that works out, and just play it from there. And so what I ended up doing was I basically went the total opposite route that I normally would, and I kept that snake is damn near bone dry.
Okay.
So I had it in a little container, and I was literally just wetting the corners of paper towel, and then basically that's I was just wet the corners of the paper towel, and so just literally a few drops of water. I mean, just for a tiny bit of humidity in there.
Yeah.
And then kept it bone dry and just left it alone. No perch, no nothing, and it just sat and absorbed. And I think it did it for like a full week or close to a full week.
Wow.
And I just kept bone dry like that. And then the reason I think that was beneficial is that it was like day 5 or 6, something like this. I accidentally got a significant amount of water, basically splashed water all over the tissue. And it had already, had absorbed most of it already at that point. And but it was like the next day that I could see there was like a little bit of starting to look nasty, the tissue that had gotten wet. And so I went ahead and ligated and just got rid of the snipped off the last bit that was left, since it had basically absorbed good 95% of the yolk.
Okay.
So snipped it, and it pulled back up inside, and it took 6 weeks to shed, and then he shed and fucking ate.
Wow.
So I was like,
hey, there you go.
So that's the approach I'm going to take if I encounter that again, is just to keep it as dry as possible. And it's tricky because it goes against what I would typically do. I normally keep them as humid as possible.
Right.
But yeah, in this case go the opposite route. And I think it makes sense if you think about it. Could be wrong, but it's like that by keeping that tissue as dry as possible, it just doesn't set up a breeding ground for the bacteria.
Sure. That definitely makes a lot of sense.
So hopefully that's something that can work the next time I encounter that, because inevitably there's going to be the occasional baby that's born without a yolk or with an unabsorbed yolk, and hopefully they won't all be
it's inevitable what we do.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt.
So cool. Well, I think to close it out, I just kind of want to ask generally, what are your plans, goals for the new year, for 2026?
Well, so I've got, I don't remember how many pairings going. I've got a couple of trying 2 conda to conda pairings, which is the first time I've been able to try that. But they're 2 very young males that I haven't seen any actual breeding from them yet.
Are they males?
One of them is, yeah. So that's the first time I've tried. I was on the fence about whether I wanted to try doing that, because my initial plan was like, all right, none of the offspring that I produce, I'm just going to only put them to other captive bred.
Yeah.
But I talked to Ed about it, and he had said back in the day when he was working with Northerns, he had some good luck and success putting captive bred males that he produced to long established wild caught females. So I thought more about it. It's like, all right, it makes sense to do that, I think, with a few of them. So I'm trying that. So I have one of the 2022 male condas that I produced, actually trying to breed him back to his mother, and because I'm still trying to understand how the genetics of the anaconda phase stuff works.
Yeah. So,
and then I have a wild caught. I had bought a 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago now. An anaconda phase wild caught little baby. Okay. So I raised that one up, and I have that paired with Big Dottie. But I've seen no action from them. I'm not 100% sure that one's a male, actually. that young one. I'm pretty sure, but I've never actually probed it. But the other one I know is for sure a male, and he has been showing signs of courtship. I don't know if she's accepting, but like I've seen him doing, he's claw dancing and trying to court already. So hopefully that'll pan out to something.
Cool.
We'll see how that goes. And then, if everything goes well this year as far as pairings, it'll be condomania. So we'll see. And then I've got a couple of nice, I've got a nice high white pairing going as well with Larry and White Rose. I don't know how exactly how many pairings I'm going to do. I could do quite a few if I want to, but I don't know, I don't want to go too over the top with it. I think it's a bad idea to just, throw as many together as you possibly can and go too crazy with it. I want to try to do some pretty selective pairings and make sure that, I'm happy with the results that I'm getting. And there's generally like a goal that I'm working towards with most of the pairings.
Yeah.
A few of them, of course, are going to be kind of just like, let's just see what happens when you put this one with this one.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely, definitely interested to see how it goes. So yeah, if things go well, could be quite a good year. Maybe even some patternless babies if that takes. That'll be a first for me. But we'll see how that goes. And but it's going to be, May, June, probably at the earliest I would anticipate before I see any other ovulations.
Sure.
Although, maybe before that. I forgot the one female has been breeding since last year. She could go earlier than that.
Okay.
So, but I think the other ones will all be later in the year.
Hey, man, it's exciting. Definitely looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah, it is, but it's the downside is that it means got to get rid of some ones that I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because it's just not going to, it can't, if I have a bunch of good litters, and that means some stuff's going to have to go to new homes. So we'll see.
Yep. And there will be a lot of very happy people out there who are going to be jumping up and down at that news. So, well, cool, man. I mean, not quite the marathons of old, but I think
I had more shit prepared, but it's not as much talking about the emerald stuff. I didn't catch all of your last episode on the corporate discussion stuff, but I thought that would be kind of interesting to talk about the corporate stuff and tech and everything a little bit. But we do it another time. It's getting a bit long tonight. I
feel like
because it could be a 4 or 5 hour. At that point.
Man, just based alone on the subject matter, I feel like that's probably not best for 3 hours deep into a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it was the middle of the day. So, but yeah, we definitely gotta do another one on that. Well, as always, man, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
As always, it's always so great getting to talk to you and getting to bounce ideas. So, very much enjoyed this.
Holy shit, hang on, I just realized. Okay. For a split second there, I was like, did I put the lid back on that? I had the snake out earlier, and I'm like, kind of mindlessly, just thinking, shit, did I put the lid back on there? Okay, I did. All right.
Steve is begging for Emerald Tree Roundtable. I feel like he's missing the entire series of shows that happened on Tuesday, where I mean, I guess they do talk mostly about chondros, but there's definitely a lot of emerald talk going on there too. But yeah, 100%, great idea. So for anybody who wants to keep up with what you have going on, inquire about availability, where can people hit you up?
Instagram, I'm most responsive on there. I'm on Facebook as well, but Instagram is Snake Spirit still. I haven't fucked with the transferring and changing names and all this crap with the accounts. So yeah, that's the best way to find me on Instagram. And when I make some more changes with that, I'll announce it there. And yeah, that's the best way. Just pretty much follow me there. I do have a YouTube, and I like the idea of putting more content on there. But so far, I've only liked the idea of putting more content out there. I haven't actually put more content out regularly on there. So. Man.
I can speak now firsthand. It can
can take a lot out of you. that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, your experience with that, and you know, how and thinking about that, and the change in technology with AI that's going on, and you know, all that stuff. But we'll do that. We'll have another opportunity.
We gotta
to
do
talk
another
about
show about that alone. Cool. Well, dude, thanks once again for being on the show tonight. Thank you to everybody who watched or listened. Absolutely most appreciated as always. And catch you all back here next week for an episode. All right. Good night, everybody.
Take care, y'all.